Welcome to another episode of True Abundance Interview. I'm Jeff Kraft, and on this episode, we come to you from the Jewel of the Southeast, Charleston, South Carolina. I'm going to be chatting with Dr. Renee and Dr. DeFee, the founders of the MOD Institute. What is the MOD? We're going to find that out, but this is a technology-driven education center I can't wait to introduce you to. But first, I got to figure out how to get on these boats. Mike, Wally, I appreciate you guys sitting down with me. I mean, come on, look at this setting right here. This is Charleston at its finest. Being down here on the dock, I mean, I'm in San Diego, I feel like I'm at home.
That's right.
This is great. This is great. You guys come down here a lot?
Very often.
Yeah?
Yep.
Want to find out about MOD. Tell me, first off, what does MOD stand for?
MOD means Modern Optimized Dentistry, which is essentially a way of thinking, a way of practicing, and a way of treating your patients that takes all the technology into consideration and combines that synergistically with evidence in the literature to create like a truly evidence-based but yet modern way of practice.
Okay, that sounds great. If I read that on paper, I was like, wow, that is amazing. How did you come to this whole philosophy?
You know, I've been leading digital dentistry residents and residencies for over a decade now, and I've developed my own philosophy on patient care and the best way to optimize the technology for being not only very efficient in your practice, but also upping that level of aesthetics and quality.
So when Mike came on board, how did this relationship start? How do you guys know each other?
We met in dental school a long time ago.
Okay.
I'm an old man now, but Mike is a PhD and a DMD, which is a very rare type of unicorn that exists in the world, where I became really impressed with his level of knowledge as it relates to everything in the dental space and beyond into the scientific space.
Okay, and so when you came on board and you saw what was going on, you guys know each other. Have you guys talked about this before? You know, sitting, having a drink, going, I got this idea. Were you on board from the very beginning?
Well, this is an idea that Wally and I honestly have bounced around for many years.
Okay.
And you know, it came to the point, about a year and a half ago where we were like, now's the time. We're just at a really unique time in dentistry where scientific knowledge and technology is coming to a point where we can really revolutionize the way we practice, both from an efficiency standpoint, but also from a conservative and patient-centered practice.
Okay.
In a way that I don't think we've seen that ever in dentistry, honestly.
I want to talk about the build out of your team. How did you decide who to bring on? And what does it take for somebody to say, I want to be a part of that. I love what these guys are doing. I love what they stand for. This is who I am, and this is where dentistry is going. Sign me up. Who do you look for?
Yeah, so we have 10 faculty members, surgeons, periodontists, we have GPs, just a good blend of individuals who all are passionate about digital dentistry. That's really the only checkbox you need to have. And really it's all about those relationships, right? So these guys and gals are my closest friends, and we've been building relationships together for years. And so the first step is if you want to be a faculty member, is to come check us out and see what we're all about. Come be a part of the family. We're very open to all sorts of talents and individuals. There's no egos. We check the egos at the door. Everybody's equal and welcome. It's a really cool place to come learn. It's unintimidating, and it's one of those places where it's not my way or the highway. It's an open discussion where we sometimes learn a ton from those faculty members that we have bringing in from external sources.
What do you feel like the biggest strength that you guys have, as a team, not just with you two, but the entire faculty? What is your biggest strength?
The team that we've built is kind of like a family. We think alike in a lot of regards, but yet we're very different. So we complement each other. So we're on week. We have people who are going to take over and build up. So Mike's super smart as it relates to anything business related. So he's run very big, very successful practices. And from the practice management side, that's something that I don't have a background in, coming from academics, coming from that type of research background. So iron sharpens iron. We're just always lifting each other up.
What else do you guys like to do? I know you're into crypto.
Yes.
Right? You're into crypto. You've been into crypto for a while.
Well, yes, of course, crypto is one of my interests, and I think, you know, we're going to see blockchain as a technology change just ways that we live and interact that is totally unpredictable at this point. I like to liken it to, and I'm not unique in saying this, but it's like the internet in the 90s. Like, there's all this buzz around it. It's really cool and new, and there's so many things that could happen, but nobody really knows what it's going to flesh out to. So I think that is something that's super exciting to me. That's a strength between me and Wally, in that we both always are looking to get better. And so, you know, getting into crypto, passionate about that, because I think it is another, like digital dentistry to the practice of dentistry is going to be transformative just to the way we live as a whole. Love to surf. Admittedly, I'm not quite as active as I was before having children, but you know, love the outdoors, and that's what makes Charleston great. Is we have outdoor weather 12 months of the year.
Yeah.
And so, you know, really love living here, and that's probably me in a nutshell.
What about you?
Man, I'm boring, man. It's all dentistry or nothing. I mean,
with your glasses on your shirt, I'm boring.
I live, sleep, and dream dentistry. I love it. It's everything in my life that, you know, besides my family, my beautiful family, I either want to spend time doing cool stuff in dentistry or spend time with my family, and there's not a lot of gray area in between there, because dentistry consumes so much of my passion and time that any little left over I have to give to my family, which is just basically me in a nutshell.
So, you know, we've talked a lot about building the team. It's, you know, family, the relationships. Let's talk about that relationship with True Abutment. Who created that relationship? How did it start?
Our success is largely due to partnering with incredible companies. And True Abutment in 2017, we were on a golf trip at a course, and Son Kim was there. And we were just golfing, and I got talking with him, and he's like, you know, you do a lot of implants, you do a lot of abutments, you should try us out. And I said, okay, I'll try you out. And it was probably the best thing that I did for my practice. For those of you who don't know, they have a custom abutment solution for many different implant manufacturers that they also are all digital. So I was able to take that 3D file and mill it in my in-office milling machine for pennies on the dollar compared to what I was paying, and the quality was better. You can't lose.
You can't lose.
You can't lose.
It's a win-win. It's what it is.
Well, yeah. I mean, it just makes sense, not only financially, but it was the quality of the parts and pieces that went into the implants that really impressed me.
Trends in 2022. I mean, we're the end of the year here. It's been an interesting last couple of years, of course, with COVID, so many challenges that everybody's had to overcome. But what are some of the trends that you guys see coming up in 2022?
I mean, scanner and 3D printing adoption are through the roof in dentistry. So scanner adoption's peaking close to 40% with 20% annual growth. So 3D scanning, intraoral scanning is just something that's going to be in 5 years in every single dental office. And it's finally, we've bridged that chasm where we've beyond early adopters, and we're rocketing up the adoption scale for intraoral scanners, and 3D printing is right there. So it's so exciting to see those technologies take off in our profession, because we've been doing it for 15, 20 years now, and finally now it's everybody's catching on that it's just a practice changer.
You know, with the folks that are watching from the office, from home, or wherever they're watching, they want to be a part of what you guys are doing. What can they do just to be around you guys, to talk to you guys, create that relationship? What's the best way to do that?
To get into the kind of mod family, we have online modules that you could have for free. Check us out, see if you like the feel of the courses, come learn, see what digital dentistry is all about, and then come visit us and check out a course and come hang out with us. We go sailing on our courses. We have a lot of fun. We like to build those relationships outside of the classroom.
My last question for you, Mike, is I mean, it's a tough question. I'm not sure how you're going to answer it. But you like mimosas?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Let's go get some mimosas.
Let's do it. that steady hand. That's the hand of a surgeon right there.
Cheers! Cheers! Well, there you go. Another episode of Interview in the books. Chatted with Mike and Wally, a couple of great guys. Here in Charleston, South Carolina, the way you do it, you finish off with a glass of champagne. Until next time, bye, guys. Cheers! Cheers! So Taylor, I want to find out about you because you recently took the class, but why did you get into dentistry?
I chose dentistry when I was very young, actually, because I've always had a passion for the sciences, but also I wanted to have a career where I would be able to be artistic. So dentistry was the perfect storm of those two.
Oh, it certainly is. So now we're at the Mod building here. What an amazing view, being able to see Charleston from this location. What was it like taking this course?
Well, obviously it was beautiful because they have panoramic views of the harbor.
Yeah.
But also it was different from any other CE courses I've taken because we had a lot of hands-on activities. I learned a lot of information that would be applicable to my daily practice. I've actually been able to institute it already. I learned a ton on anterior technique.
Yeah.
So the teachers were available. We have small class sizes that we took, and yeah.
One thing that I like that they say is like they're able to, the individuals, dentists that are able to take this course, they can implement it the Monday after. And you were able to do that.
Absolutely. That same Monday I went and did an anterior front tooth. I was able to match it perfectly thanks to the instruction I got here. And yeah, the patient left super happy.
Now, what do you think is the biggest difference between other CE courses compared to the Mod Institute besides the hands-on? What are the instructors like?
The instructors were extremely approachable, helpful. The class sizes were smaller than some of the other CE courses I've been into.
Okay.
So you got a lot more individual time with the instructors. There was a networking event afterwards, so we could have one-on-one time with the instructors and, answer any questions that we had. Yeah, it was just a great overall experience. I felt like I learned a ton and was able to actually implement it with the hands-on experience.
So for people that are out there watching right now, they're saying, there's a lot of CE courses out there. Why Mod? What would you say to them?
I would say Charleston is awesome. That's a reason to come. And then I would also say if you're looking to really just up your game and become an expert sooner than, finding out on your own, and if you want some real one-on-one instruction, I would choose the Mod Institute.
So technology driven, and it's so important right now.
Yes, this is definitely the best place to go get trained in digital dentistry.
That's great, that's awesome. Welcome to another episode of True Bubman's Interview. Well, for the final time this season, I'm Jeff Kraft, and welcome to another episode of True Abutment's Interview. First off, I want to start by saying thank you so much for tuning in each week as we've brought you some amazing stories from dentists, dental lab owners, educators, but on this episode, it's a little bit special. I wanted to bring you to Irvine, California, the headquarters of True Abutment, to introduce you to the people that make this great company tick and made it such a joy for me to be a part of. Come on. I always love coming here to True Abutment, and of course seeing Katie.
Hey, Jeff.
How are you?
I'm good.
You know, we look like a couple of Christmas ornaments right now.
Yes.
I got the red, you got the green.
I love it. I love it. And hey, this is the main seminar room I told you about. And this is one of the reasons why we actually chose this building. We're trying to focus more on educating dentists, inviting them to really learn our workflow and actually meet the team and stuff right here. Do you see this?
Right here. Awesome. These are pool sticks. There's like 30 different pool sticks made into really a piece of art. And this entire building really is an architectural masterpiece.
It really is. So speaking of the seminar space, we actually have a second area over here with 12 workstations with all the computers and software set up for the dentist to learn hands-on.
Yeah, I guess so. You know what I love about this building? Not only that it's beautiful just visually, but I mean visually you can see outside Irvine, beautiful Southern California through, there's so many windows here.
Yes, I love it. I love it. It's beautiful. And guess what? We're approaching our marketing room.
Oh man,
and here we come. I have Waylon and Naya to introduce you to.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Naya. How are you?
Good. Nice to see you.
All right, so I'm going to chat with you, Naya, because Waylon's working on something really important. I don't know what it is. Tell me, what is it you do with the company here at True Abutment?
I am the photographer and content coordinator here on our marketing team. So on any given day, I could be designing an email blast or editing photos, but the work never stops.
Yeah, it never stops. With True Abutment, the interview aspect, what do you like about the episodes?
Well, one of my favorite parts of the interview is just the connection that you get to see and that our team captures. We have a great chemistry here on our marketing team, so it's lovely to see that also at other businesses that we work with and our clients as well. So
and I gotta say, your photos are always amazing, by the way.
Jeff. Yeah.
Waylon, you're not gonna get away from this interview. How long have you been with True Abutment?
I've been with True Abutment for about 5 months now.
Okay, fairly new, fairly new. What do you like best about the episodes?
I really love how we're able to get a better insight with our clients, and we get to really see how they function and work.
Yeah, it really is. You know, notice he didn't mention me at all. You know, that's fine. Get back to work, you guys. Get back
Come on, Jeff. Let's go. Let's go. I'm going to take you away from these people. So that is our accounting department.
Oh, that's how I get paid. Okay.
And hey,
HR. I'm in there a lot. I get in trouble quite a
and
bit.
our CEO's room.
That's John's office.
Yes, he's not there. No. And this is the sales department.
Oh, got
and
it.
Hey, Oliver is waiting for us. I'm gonna just leave you two at it.
All right, I'll meet you. I'll meet you down the hallway.
Okay.
Oliver, how you doing? Good to see you. Good to see you. All right, I want to chat with you because your story is quite a bit different than most of the rest of the team that's here at True Abutment. You're actually a dentist in Europe. You came over to the States and you teamed up with True Abutment. Tell me about how this all got started.
Yeah, that's exactly the way it is. So basically, I was always interested in dentistry. Finished school there, practiced dentistry for about 2 years, and then I moved here with my family. So I definitely wanted to get back into dentistry here again. And I just found True Abutment, started working with them, and it's been a great journey since then.
So what do you like most about coming to work? It's obviously a fantastic team. It's a very diverse team, which I really love. What's your favorite parts about coming to work?
Just, you know, like coming every day and like, you know, like hanging out with all the guys here, you know, doing a lot of hard work, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And, you know, like seeing the company like growing and improving every day, you know, that's definitely like something that I enjoy a lot.
Such a big asset to the team here at True Abutment. Hey, nice chatting with you.
Same here.
I'm sure you got something going on. I don't understand dentistry. Lots of calls?
Yeah.
There you go. I want to meet up with Katie. I'm coming, I'm coming.
Oh, there you are.
He's a good guy. I like chatting with Oliver.
Good, good. I'm glad you guys had fun. And hey, this is the customer care department
Busy
and our
in here.
last hall. Yes, this is the busiest section in the building. And hey, there are Angelina and Aria.
Kind of a block away from Golden West College, the JC. Hermosa? Yeah. Huntington? Yeah. Huntington's. Yeah. Yeah, it's like the 405. 405 between the 55 and the 605, kind of where the 22 kind of merges with all that.
Yeah, there's a very nice beach there.
Yeah. Where are you coming from?
LA.
Okay. Traffic bad?
Yeah, and then I
Yeah.
just exit.
Okay. Combo? It's funny because I'm like 15 minutes away and it took me probably twice as long as normal to get here. I'm like, people are out and about driving now with high gas prices. You guys get a hold of anyone else? Or are they just
We have one more, Dr. Hussein, they'll be here right around 9:30.
30? Okay.
And then we had one that just got back to us saying that.
go ahead and get started. Going to be pretty intimate today, so please interrupt me, and we'll kind of go down some of the tangents that I guess I'm not maybe clarifying well enough for you guys, or just some of the things that you guys want to talk about. Really, the morning is going to be a little bit more lecture, about 2.5 to 3 hours, right around noon. And then we'll take a quick break for lunch, and if it's this small, we might do a working lunch, and then go ahead and do some hands-on stuff. We're going to do, just the hands-on stuff will be the pylon kit, so single unit implants with the guided kits that they've created for us. And then we'll kind of switch over and turn it into internal sinus bumps and using the Urus pylon kit, the sinus bump kit that Urus has created. Okay. You're going to see some of my mistakes. You're going to see some oopsies on some cases, and then some things that hopefully you guys can learn from. And then please interrupt me. So I always start every single lecture I give with this quick video. It's pretty simple. Just follow directions on the screen. Just follow the team in white and how many passes the team in white make. So the answer is 13. But the real question is, did you see the moonwalking bear walking through the video? So we're going to rewind it real quick. And now look at the picture as a whole. And if we focus on the middle, we see the bear walking through the picture. So the reason I do that, I think, as dentists and how we were trained, is we get so focused in on what we were taught, and that's periodontal disease, gum disease, fillings, crowns. So we don't often see the things that we weren't taught. So I always say the pyramid of success that John Wooden created, I kind of created a different pyramid of success, is that to first see something, we need to be educated on it. We need to learn about it. Then we can see it. So what I did right there with that video is I kind of rewind and had you see things differently by telling you what to look for. When we see things differently, we can start diagnosing in a completely different way. And when we start diagnosing, we can finally treat. And then I call the repeat and do it all over again. And you're going to see how I've changed my practice in the last probably 5 or 6 years. Is I've leveraged technology in a massive way. We started with CEREC, then we brought on Cone Beam, and then having those two pieces of equipment allowed me to leverage and started adding more procedures into my practice. So I was able to educate myself, I was able to see things differently because of the equipment that I had. We were able to diagnose, and then we were able to treat. And I started with clear aligners, then we went on to sleep apnea, and then I've only been doing implants for about 2.5 to 3 years. But I've kind of used this model of educate, see, diagnose, treat, repeat in all these different avenues to then widen the scope of what I can do as a GP. And it's once I'm able to repeat this and add all these different services to my patients, my practice has taken off exponentially. So why are we here? We're here to start learning about placing implants, doing implants, and hopefully to avoid stuff like this. So now, what could have been a simple implant, a single tooth, a one-tooth problem, has now turned into a 3-tooth problem. This patient came into my office about a year ago. This tooth was mobile due to the bone loss. This tooth or implant is a goner, needed to come out. And then we had this tooth that he hit up here, and now there's a little periapical radiolucency. So now we have a 3-tooth issue. If we do stuff guided and we do it simply and predictably, it could have been a slam dunk case for this particular case. Now we have a big problem to unwind and kind of fix, because the doctor just put an implant where he thought where visually he thought it could have been. He didn't look at CTs. He didn't use it guided. He just threw a big giant drywall screw into the bone and hoped it worked. So You're going to hear me use this why a lot. I'm a big believer in kind of figuring out the reasons behind why we do things. So the main reasons we're here today is why, is we're going to, and what I'm going to teach you is a crown down approach to implant planning. If we know where the tooth is and we have a game plan of where ultimately we want to go restoratively, then we know where the implant should go. And we always need a roadmap to figure out how we're going to get there. So I always say we need to figure out how we're going to get there is by first figuring out where we want to put the crown. So everything's going to start with a crown down approach to implant planning, and then we have to make some determinations. If all of a sudden we're doing a screw retain restoration, we can't get the screw access hole through the middle of the tooth, of the crown, then we have to figure out, are we going to be doing custom abutments? Are we going to be doing angulated screw channels? Do we need to do bone grafting? So having that plan in place and starting with a roadmap, I think will lead to a lot of success. The second reason, or the second thing I hope to accomplish today is what's called a fully guided, fully timed, keyless implant placement. That's a lot of terms in there. So what does each of one of these mean? Fully guided means osteotomies are done through the guide, as well as the implant is placed through the guide. So a lot of systems you do the osteotomies through the guide, and then you'll take the guide off and then freehand the implant. Everything that we're going to be teaching today is going to be done through the guide. Fully timed. What does that mean? So there's the timing. Most of these, all of the implants we're talking about today with Urus have a hex. So there's six locations of that hex. And with this system, there's going to be a notch on the guide that lines up on a notch with the implant driver. So we can have the implant perfectly timed when we're done placing it. What that allows us to do is if we're doing custom healing abutments, if we're doing custom abutments and immediately loading this implant, we can have everything done beforehand. So it makes the surgery very, very quickly and very, very efficiently. If we're freehanding it, we have no idea about the timing. If we're, and with a lot of guides, they don't have the timing involved as well. So we're just placing the implant a millimeter subcrestal, and then we would have to put on impression coping, scan bodies, all that stuff has to be done after. And then if we're making temporaries, all that timing, the patient is in the chair for a lot longer. So the fully timed is very important. Now, what does keyless mean? It means that when the guide goes in place, in a lot of these kits, with your other hand, you have to put a key that fits into the guide hole, and then you use your osteotomy. So there's a lot of stuff. There's the guide, there's the key, and then there's you with the osteotomy going in and out. The keyless system is there's no extra key. It's all built into the osteotomy burrs, and you just go to depth with the drills into the guide. So they're really getting really snazzy with it. And then the last thing that I want to accomplish today is what's called the fully guided. So essentially all of these terms I just talked about, but now we're doing the exact same thing but with internal sinus bumps. So all of it can be done through the guide. And we can have really good success at getting pretty big sinus bumps internally, and we'll kind of talk about particular cases that are going to be green lights, some yellow lights, and then some red light cases that we're not going to be doing with an internal sinus bump, that we're going to need to do a lateral sinus window, and that's not a course I'm teaching today. That's a whole different ballgame. So I'm going to kind of turn it over to you guys right now and kind of just introduce yourselves, kind of where you at in your practice, where you at in your implant journey, so I kind of have a better feel on kind of what we're doing today. So.
I'm doing implant for many years, but not consistent.
Okay.
Doing that, I select cases. Mainly just simple implant.
Okay.
No sinus there. I use Japanese dentist.
Okay.
And some Nobel.
Okay. What do you consider a simple, like what's your boundaries, or what do you feel comfortable with right now?
Well, basically, I use the CT scan.
Okay.
I mean, if it's within the thickness and the depth is within the comfortable zones, then
Okay.
If it's like too shallow, too narrow, so
Yeah.
most cases I think
Okay. Are you doing guided or freehanding it?
freehand.
Okay.
I use freehanded, but I use X-ray to
Yeah.
sort of guide my directions, like that.
Okay.
So basically I take X-rays.
Okay.
So freehand.
Cool.
I want to learn more like guided, so to pass my
Yeah.
so especially like I appreciate going to talk about the science, the vertical science things.
Yeah.
So if I can have guided, I feel confident.
Yep. Yeah, we'll talk about all of that today. That'll probably be the tail end of the lecture, but we'll go through everything that you talked about.
I don't have visit plans right now, but I'm ready to get started.
Okay.
I just want to have some training, but I have a place several, but not recently.
Okay. Placed it in at your training?
Yeah.
Okay. And what's helping you try to get over that threshold of starting to do them in your office?
Bored.
What?
I'm bored.
Bored? Okay. Okay. No, I was exactly at that point. So my background is that's me in the dental office that I'm currently working at. Both my parents were dentists. So as you can tell, I literally grew up in the practice. Throughout high school, when they kind of brought computers in, I was there updating insurances and putting insurance in the system. I used to clear the water lines on the weekend. And then my mother told me she didn't want me to become a dentist. So I listened to her very, very well and became one. And then in dental school, I went to dental school, and then I think my third or fourth year, I was on emergency clinic. And I got a page to go up to the chart room and get a chart for a patient. I get the chart, and you literally get the chart and you turn around, and then like everyone's waiting there. So I didn't really have much time to look at the chart and why this patient was coming into the emergency. So I call the patient's name, and you know those like cartoons where you see like full arm casts and like full leg casts, and he's just like sitting in a wheelchair like this. I call the patient, and he goes, "Yeah, that's me." And I'm like, "What can I do for you today?" And he's like, "I broke my temporary." And I'm like, "Okay, I got this. I can fix a temporary." And we wheel him back, and he's like, "Sorry, I just got out." Like, I kind of started to get his stories. He was a janitor at the local hospital, was up on a ladder, and like around a corner, and then they came like running around with a patient on a gurney and knocked the ladder out from underneath him, and he fell and broke like almost every bone in his body. He had casts everywhere. He's like, I just got essentially not admitted or not kicked out of the hospital, but released from the hospital is the word I'm looking for. And I broke my temporary during the fall. I just haven't been able to get back to the dentist. So we wheel him back, and I pick him out of the chair, and I sit him down, and I look in his mouth, and it's not a one-tooth temporary, it's not a two-tooth temporary, it's not a quadrant of temporaries, it's full arch temporaries. And at that point I was like, okay, I would probably, and I don't have any records to go off of. I start looking through his chart, and yeah, he had a full mouth rehab, and he was in temporaries, and they were gonna restore it, but it had been like 5 or 6 months since they did it. So I have no records to go off of. I would probably be crapping my pants now if that walked into my office, like, hey, can you fix a temporary for me? Let me let him in. Hey, how are you? No problem. I'm just telling my introductory story. So I have this full mouth rehab patient. It probably, like, some of the temporaries were there, but I had to really like freehand a full arch worth of temporaries. It took me like 3 or 4 hours to do. Guy was super awesome, and at the end of the appointment, he looks at me, he's like, hey, I've just been sitting here for like 4 or 5 hours. I need to go to the bathroom. I need to go to the bathroom fast. So I'm luckily a big enough guy, get him back into the wheelchair. And he goes, and you're gonna have to help me. I didn't bring anyone, I don't have like a caretaker with me. So we're starting to run. He goes, and you're gonna need to go fast. So I like wheel him, and we're going out of the main clinic, and we're wheeling him to the closest bathroom, and he goes, and you need to bring cups. What do we have access to in the dental clinic is like 2-ounce cups, maybe an ounce at the best. So I grab some cups and we go to the bathroom, and I'm thinking to myself as we go along here, like I went to dental school, I didn't go to med school, so I have no idea what's ahead of me, like what's gonna be in store for me in the next 2 or 3 minutes. So we get into the bathroom, he's like, you're gonna have to help. So like I help wiggle off his pants, and I give him cup number 1, and he fills it up in about 2 seconds. And he gives me a cup of now warm urine, and I'm holding it in my hand, and I'm like, I don't want to ever be holding my own cup of warm urine in my hand, let alone someone else's. So I just chuck it and throw it at I just get it away from me, and I throw it. I now give him cup number 2, and we're kind of have this factory line of him filling up cups and handing them to me. I'm throwing him into the trash, I'm throwing him into the sink, I just don't care. And he fills up all those cups in about 30 seconds, and now I'm going into the sink and into the trash and like picking them back up and handing them to him. And what seems like forever probably took all of a minute, and at the very last cup, when he's all done, he then goes ahead and spills it all over me. So at that moment, I knew as soon as I could get into dental practice and could get into digital dentistry and avoid temporaries, I would. It was like that moment, that epiphany. So it took me a couple years, but we eventually got there and brought on CEREC and brought in 3D technology and cone beam, and it truly revolutionized my practice. So that's kind of a little bit about my introduction. Before you walked in, we kind of did introductions with them, but kind of.
Yeah, I'm Skaras Bukai. I'm a GP here in Irvine, very close to here. I've been practicing for more than 15 years. I have a CEREC on.
Okay, perfect. Are you? Go ahead. Okay. Are you placing implants currently? Okay. Okay. Are you freehand guided? Perfect. Are you making them with a CEREC guide?
I have no. I don't use. I'm using because I have the Anatomatch software, so I
okay.
have a CEREC guide usually. I just send it the plan and we use Anatomatch.
Okay. So it's going to be a very similar process that we're going to talk about today. You need a CT scan. I would highly recommend it. If you don't, it sounds like I know you two. I don't know if you do you have a CT scanner? Okay. So it'd be one of the first things I would invest in, and I think not only it's going to help you leverage implants, but you're going to see so many more failing root canals, pathosis, pathology that you also, when you see that stuff and you start extracting and bone grafting, it'll give you a lot more opportunities for implants. So I would highly, highly recommend it.
So how do you start then?
How do we start?
How do you get practice? You GP first, right?
Yeah, I'm a GP first. How did I get into it? I started, I took an implant course, a hands-on course that focused in on guided surgery.
You start with the guided implant?
Yeah, I completely started with guided. So I can count probably on one hand how many free-handed surgeries I've done.
So the process you took is like a comprehensive?
Yeah, so it was a comprehensive course. It was a total of 6 months over 3 classes, three or 4 day classes. First class was extraction bone grafting techniques. Second class was how to make the guides and plan the guides. And then which what we're going to talk about today, you really don't need to learn how to do any of that with this kit. You can send it all to True Abutment and Urus, and they will fabricate all of the guides for you. And then the third class was 3 days of like 4 or 5 implants each and every day. So, does that kind of get the answer you were looking for?
So after that, you took a lot of continuing education
Took a lot of continuing education classes on implants, and then just you have to like make that commitment and take that step to start doing it on your patients. Learning which ones case you felt comfortable, which ones were green, what I call green light, yellow light, red light, I'm not doing. I have a periodontist in my practice, so I would kind of see the ones that I was referring to him, and then I would go watch those surgeries and kind of learn from him as well. So it was a combination of just, I always say you have to take that leap of faith. That first one is the scariest one, and I'll kind of talk to you about kind of my practice philosophy as well. I don't know why this keeps going on to.
So you don't do the level sinus?
I do not, but that's my goals and my philosophy is I always pick one thing to learn each and every year. So I'm taking a in-person lateral sinus window course this summer.
So how do you select your classes?
Word of mouth, people that have taken it before, and then I just kind of learn from other dentists and other mentors that I have, and what classes they've taken and learn from, and kind of just Google it and find out where those classes are offered. So, I was telling you the story about my mom, how she told me not to become a dentist. Then I also worked with both my parents, but my dad had this philosophy that, and he loved saying this, he really owned this saying, is that he was just a measly tooth carpenter. And what that to me was, and what I learned after working with them for about 4 or 5 years, is they like to do simple restorative. They were a drill and fill practice. And I kind of, at the 4 or 5 year mark, I started to get a little bit frustrated because that's all that they were doing. That was their comfort zone. And I saw all the different lectures and all of the continuing education that was out there. And I saw that by using the technology that was out there, the cone beams, the CERECs, the intraoral scanners, you could leverage that technology and do implants, do all these other procedures just as well as any specialist. And I kind of had to have that moment where we kind of had to break through and take that step or that leap of faith into that world and start doing those procedures.
Do you like CEREC?
I love CEREC. Yeah.
Is it a good investment?
I think it was. You're gonna ask me that question in about 2 minutes, and I think the graph will speak for itself. So I always put this slide up, and I'm hoping to get some feedback from you guys on when you see this as a dental practitioner right now, what's the easiest thing for you guys to tackle? What's the first thing that you would try to do to increase your profit right now?
Increase revenue.
Okay, perfect. So I think that's the answer I want to hear. When I often will do this is everyone looks at overhead and how do we decrease overhead. I think that's the easy thing that dentists think they can accomplish really easily. I think right now, given the last 2 years, that's super difficult. I don't know if any of you knew what the cost of a box of gloves was before the pandemic. Like under $5, pretty easy. Do you know what it was at the height of the pandemic? Yeah, it was like, right. I think I was paying like $20 a box of gloves. Right, yeah. Trying to source masks, and then with the cost of inflation, now all of our supplies are going up. And All of our employees are asking for increased wages, the cost of gas, all this stuff. So I think that's tough to do right now. I'm hoping we can keep it as level as possible, but I think we all have to accept that the overhead is going up. Revenue, and I think as the general dentist that my parents had, their revenue was really plateauing. Like, it was like the first 5 or 6 years that I was practicing with them, we did the exact same number every single year, no matter how much time we took off, how much little time we took off. But that profit, with our revenue staying the same and our overhead increasing, we were actually decreasing the amount of profit that we were having each and every year with that model. I think if you are have third-party payers and with insurances now trying to decrease our revenue, I think that drill and fill dentist model it's not survivable. We have revenues decreasing and overhead increasing. It's not the practice model that we need to be in. And that's where, how do we increase our revenue? So I think one big push out there right now is we'll drop your insurances and then you can charge whatever you want to charge. That's one way of doing it. That's one way. I think for me as a younger dentist, I think a lot of patients, yeah, you may be able to keep them, but if you're looking at growing your practice and doing something with that, turning it over, selling it, for me, 20 or 30 years down the road, I think that's a hard pill to swallow. So I, like you, started to increase our revenues by adding additional services to the practice. Adding clear aligner therapy, doing dental sleep medicine, and then the one that really took off was when we started doing extractions, bone grafts, and implants, and then implant restorations. Because implants aren't just a one ticket line item, they're like a 3, 4, 5, 6 ticket line item when you really think about it, especially if you start adding sinus lifts, internal sinus bumps as well. And then being comfortable doing like ones and twosies. Right now, my favorite procedure is like a quadrant of implants, like two or three implants on a guide. It literally takes me 30 seconds longer to place a second implant rather than a one implant. So that's where we just started increasing the amount of services. That was kind of my model to do that.
Do you have a hygiene?
Yeah, we have. So right now we're up to 3 hygienists. And I have myself, I have an associate there 3 days a week. And the other thing that happens is when when I start taking over some of the specialty services like implants, is that my schedule gets fuller, and now my associate's happier because some of the quadrants of dentistry now kind of trickles down to her, or she's now I'm doing like the anterior 6 stuff that I used to do regularly. I'm now more focused in on implants, on surgery, on dental sleep medicine. So it helps her, kind of fill her schedule. The other model that I have used is I started looking at and kind of networking with some of the older dentists in my area, kind of looking at the 5 mile marker, and started doing some chart acquisitions. Because those older dentists kind of were like my parents' model of dentistry, where it was just drill and fill, and they referred everything out. If I can bring them in, put them in the CT scan, and see like failing root canals and periapical lesions left and right, and I can do that work instead of referring it out, that practice is a lot more valuable to me than what it is to them. So we've done 1 chart acquisition last year, and we're going to close a second one at the end of April 30th, May 1st is that date. Does that make sense? So they're like, these doctors are on month-to-month leases. They don't have long-term leases, and they're retiring, and then we bring those patients over to our practice. How do we afford them?
No, how do you look for?
Just study groups that they were in, like different networking events, and just kind of talk to them and kind of get a feel for like what their long-term plan is. Like I already have like 2 or 3 more that have talked to, and kind of, the one guy is like 70. He's on the 2nd floor of a building that doesn't have an elevator. His lease is up in a year. He's like, I know my practice, I can't sell it because no one wants to buy a practice on a 2nd floor with no elevator. He's like, I also don't want to move. So these are just opportunities that you kind of need to look for, at least for me, to help kind of grow my practice. And then now we're looking at potentially adding another associate. So what I've kind of learned over the last couple years when I've invested in technologies, there's 3 guiding principles that I use. One is the eyes don't see what the mind doesn't know. I think that typifies that first video that I just showed you, that if we're not looking for that bear that's dancing through all the ball, like the passing of the balls, you just don't know. So that's, to me, is we need to educate ourselves. We also need to use some technology to help us see things. The second thing is, the best investment you can make is an investment in yourself. And then I think this is one that I'm going to direct to you, because you need to be doing implants as soon as you can. And it's, how do we take that step from not doing any to eventually doing them? So let me kind of go through these one by one. I think this right here typifies what a PA shows us right now. I think we're all confident that the mama lion isn't biting the baby lion's head off. But if we're only looking at a PA, we truly don't know what the other angle, the other angle is. So if we have that CBCT technology, and we can see things in 3 dimensions, we can see a lot more. So we educate, we see, then we can diagnose, and then we can treat. And I'm pretty aggressive with periapical lesions in my office, especially as someone that's doing implants. To me, I compare it to an incipient lesion on a cavity. If it's there, if it's small, I will give the patient the option, if they can save the tooth by going to the endodontist and retreating it. I want to save it catch it as soon as we can. If they can't, if there's these huge posts and they can't do a retreat, then I'm going to be recommending it. I'm not going to wait and watch stuff. I don't think we wait and watch incipient lesions or ones that have broken the DEJ, because we know it's going to eventually turn into a crown or root canal. As someone who's now doing bone grafts and trying to set up the bone for success, I want to get that infection out of there as soon as possible, because it makes my life easier, so I'm not repairing some blown out defect, some walls, and it makes the bone grafting process a lot more predictable. And if the bone grafting is a lot more predictable, the implant placement is going to be a lot more predictable. How do you talk to your patient if you see a cavity that's broken the DEJ? You tell them you need the work done.
But they have that periapical lesions for a long time.
Okay, but those periapical lesions get bigger.
No.
They don't? They're going to stay the same size? I'm going to respectfully disagree with you. They're going to get bigger.
That's all to see it.
So I say your root canal is failing, there's an infection going on in the bone. These are the options. One is we can retreat it. We can send you to the root canal specialist, especially if it's obviously missing, like an MB2. Like if the MB2 is missing and I can see it, great, this is pretty predictable. Let's send you back to the root canal specialist before this infection gets too big, and have the retreat done, and essentially we can save this tooth and increase the longevity of it.
You take a CB for the regular checkup?
A CBCT is taken as a full mouth series in my office. So you get a CBCT and then 4 bite wings. And my CBCT, my machine can turn that into a Panorex. So really it's a Panorex and 4 bite wings. And then I'm looking at the 3D technology as well.
How much do you charge?
I still charge them as a full mouth series. It doesn't cost me any more money for me to do a Panorex and 4 bite-wings than it does to take a CBCT. To me, I can diagnose 10 times the amount of information by seeing stuff in 3 dimensions. If I have any questions on if it's a PA and something looks fishy, I'm gonna be putting them in there. I don't charge them any additional information because I've already paid for the machine. The machine's sitting there. To me, every additional cycle, it doesn't cost me anymore, so why not give my patients the best treatment possible if it doesn't cost me anymore? So that's one of my philosophies is give the patient the opportunity to say yes. You need to at least inform them. Okay, maybe you don't feel that way, but at least say there's a periapical lesion, there's an infection. It may stay dormant, it may not hurt you, it will definitely continue to grow, and the bigger it grows, the more bone that's going to be lost, and the less predictable it is for me to get a bone graft and an implant in there.
So you always have the option to go to the endocrinologist?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we as dentists need to inform our patients that there's something going on. We just don't say nothing. I think that can be, I think that's a slippery slope as well. So, the eyes don't see what the mind doesn't know. It's just another way of educating ourselves. And when we educate ourselves, we also can educate our patients and give them the opportunity to say yes to more treatment. Investing in yourself. I think what I say can sometimes be taken as controversial, especially with the soaring prices of dental education right now. But let's just say, I know some of you have paid less for your dental education depending on when it was done, compared to the younger version, some of the younger ones that are coming out. But let's just say it was $500,000 to go to dental school, approximately. And I would say it's pretty confident if you're a full-time associate just coming out, if you're working hard and working 5 days a week, you could probably make $100,000. That's a 20% return on your investment. I think any of us right now would take a 20% return on your investment on just any of your money. So that's an investment that we all made in ourselves. Another investment that we can make in ourselves is our practice, but also what procedures we do. Now that I've learned implants, that is a procedure that cost me probably $15,000 or $20,000 to do in my course, but I can repeat that over and over and over and over again, and that return on my investment, I think, is infinite. So the earlier we're able to learn these things, that means the more procedures that we can do, and the better investment we can make. So learning the things that I'm going to teach about, hopefully will invest in yourself. I've also seen my team grow when I added CEREC, when I added cone beam, when I've added all these other things. I've seen team members, I think it's also screened out team members that weren't with my mindset and didn't want to grow with me. We kind of realized that maybe you're not the best fit, and it kind of started recruiting some team members and people that wanted to be there, and we now have a much more cohesive, successful team. So I think it helps. You're also investing in your team on how to do these procedures as well, how to set up, and it becomes very, very fruitful. And then the getting uncomfortable part is how do we take that leap of faith into doing these procedures? How do we allow it? There's no easy button on doing it, but when I've learned how to do implants I did it on a hands-on, live hands-on course, so I got probably 15 or 20 in during those weekends that I was learning, but how do we now implement that into your practice? One of the things that I've learned is the first time I ever do a new procedure in the office, about the first 5 or 10 times, I will do it completely free, and I will kind of pick and choose which patients we're going to do it on. Patients that maybe couldn't have afforded an implant or couldn't have afforded a sleep appliance. That's part of my investment in my courses. Now I have to, how do I take the next step and educate my team members on how to do that? And by telling these patients, hey, I tell them, this is my first or second one that I've done it in private practice. I will do it at no charge for you. Just know that we're gonna have some learning process along the line. I will have the implant rep in the office, and I tell the patients that. All of the cases have gone very, very well, very, very smoothly. It just takes the pressure off of me, takes the pressure off my team, and allows that to become more of an educational experience as well. So, and then I asked for them for like a 5-star review if it goes well, and all of them have gone well. So I have those. I mean, what's an additional 5-star review to you? If you're doing a procedure that could be upwards of $4,000 or $5,000 to the patient, and then your cost isn't even close to that $4,000 or $5,000 when it comes to doing an implant or doing a guide or something like that. So, and then the synergy. If I see something in my practice or see something that I want to invest in, and it hits all those buttons that I just talked about, educating myself, investing in myself, and making me feel a little bit uncomfortable, I know it's something that I need to do. So those are things that, like the lateral sinus course, it scares me a little bit, but it's an investment in myself, and it's also educating me. So I know that's one of the things that I need to learn how to do to kind of expand my repertoire and expand the services in my practice. So that's, for me, that's my goal for this year. So I think today, learning how to do the guided surgeries, learning how to do the setup, I think it hits all 3 of those little philosophies that I have. So hopefully you guys can take that and allow that to grow in kind of your practice, and make it much more predictable. When you're asking me, you're asking about investment and whether it was good for my practice. That right there is the first 7 or 8 years that my parents and I worked together. And you can see every single year we hit almost the exact same number. But we were less profitable each and every year because our overhead was increasing. At 2015 is when my parents decided to retire. And then that's when I was able to kind of take ownership and start investing in the technology. I started with CEREC, then we added cone beam, and you're going to see each and every year what ends up happening when you start adding additional services. And then for me, as soon as I brought in that cone beam and paired it with an intraoral scanner, you can see like this vertical growth. 2020, we had that big of a leap while also being closed down for COVID. And that was the year that 2019 is when we started doing implants. We've had significant growth. So to me, it was a huge investment, but it was a very, very worthwhile investment. When you added those 2 pieces of technology and leveraged it, just kind of start moving forward. So, questions so far?
For sleep, what are you doing? Just MAD or?
So, I do a mandibular advancement device, but we're now, we do sleep tests. So we have sleep tests that we dispense to the patient. We get them screened because I think that is the most critical part with sleep apnea. And it's a little bit of a gray area right now on whether dentists are allowed to have sleep tests. It really depends state by state. In the state of California, there are really no guidelines that say yay or nay. The only guideline that is required is that once you have the sleep test, once it comes back from the patient, it does need to be certified by a sleep physician. Almost all of the sleep test companies that are essentially marketing to dentists have sleep physicians on the back end that review it and then get you the results of that sleep test, and we'll write the letter of medical necessity to move forward.
But the treatment is MAD.
Yeah. I will, sometimes if they're younger patients, I will refer them to orthodontists and we'll do orthognathic surgery, expansion, MARPs, SARPs. I tell my young patients, hey, if you have a broken leg and the surgeon or the orthopedic surgeon says, hey, you can walk around with a crutch the rest of your life, or we can do a surgery and you can run around and have no issues, what would you choose? For my young patients, I say, hey, we can do a surgery and then you don't have to sleep with CPAP machines, mandibular advancement devices. So my acceptance rate has kind of significantly increased. I like it. If you asked me that 5 or 6 years ago, I hardly ever was gung-ho about making patients or highly recommending surgery. Now I am.
What do you see the result of the surgery?
The most successful surgery out there to treat sleep apnea right now, of all of the ENT surgeries, is a mandibular advancement, or maxillomandibular advancement. So yeah, I mean, yes.
What's your name?
MAD, it's a type of sleep appliance. Yeah, a MAD, a mandibular advancement device. So, sorry, it was a tangent. So, but if you're interested in that, have you ever gone to CDocs at all?
Oh yeah.
So,
Do you have levels?
yeah. So I just signed the contract this week to create a sleep class for CDocs. We're gonna the first class is gonna be in August.
It's not just like the silent rifle, right?
It's similar to that, but there's a lot more that goes into it.
Is it profitable?
It can be, yeah. I just got reimbursed by a medical insurance company $6,000 for one of those plans. Yeah, yeah. Not.
You have a medical.
We have a medical biller that we work with. Yeah.
Okay, you can bill through that medical.
You can bill medical through it, but there's a lot of steps. You have to put your medical. You have to literally become a medical doctor. Like not literally, but figuratively. You can bill everything through medical through it. Yeah.
You don't have to be medical doctor.
It's a medical. It's technically a durable. It's called a DME appliance. A durable medical equipment that we make and fabricate. And every time patients come in for an exam or a visit, the great thing about medical is that every time they come in, you can bill a visit that medical insurance will cover. We can bill out exams for that through their medical. I don't know why. Okay. So I'm going to show this quick video. Now we're going to start focusing on the implants and true abutment and why you guys are all here today.
The why was born out of pain. It was never an academic or commercial exercise. It was born out of a time in my life, many years ago, 10 years ago, where I had lost my passion for what I was doing. I owned my own small business. I was living the American dream. Superficially, my life was fantastic. And yet, I didn't want to wake up and do it again. And I was embarrassed by that. You know, who am I to complain about my life? My life seemed perfect, and yet I hated it. And so I kept it to myself. Every ounce of my being, all the energy that I had was invested in pretending that I was happier, more successful, and more in control than I felt. And it was debilitating, quite frankly. Strange things start to happen when you put yourself in that cycle and the stress starts to build. You start to become paranoid. So for example, I was convinced that my employees hated me. I didn't go out much, and it was really a bad time. And it wasn't until a friend of mine came to me, concerned that I wasn't acting myself, and basically offered me nothing more than moral support. Whatever you need, I got your back, I'm worried about you. And it was that simple act that gave me the courage to face my own problem. And it was that simple act that gave me the courage to seek out a solution, to go back to the way I used to feel, to be passionate about something again. There was a confluence of events, and I made this discovery that every single organization on the planet, even our own careers, always function on the same three levels. What we do, how we do it, and why we do it. And it was based on the biology of human decision making. It wasn't some highfalutin management theory. It was based on brain stuff. And I realized I knew what I did and was good at it. And I knew how I did it. I could tell you what was different or special about the way I did things. But I couldn't tell you why I was doing it. That was the missing piece. You have to have all three. I became obsessed with this thing called the why. I figured out how to find my why, and it restored my passion to levels I had never experienced before. And more importantly, I figured out how to help others find theirs. And I did what anyone would do. When you discover something beautiful, you share it with your friends. And my friends started making crazy life changes themselves. And they started finding happiness and passion that they'd never experienced before. It was me solving my own problem that happened to help others solve it for them too. And people just kept inviting me and I just kept saying yes. I was making huge decisions that were really easy to make. Like I shut down my office and started over again because I realized the business I had built was so inconsistent with my why. All my friends thought I went out of business and they worried about me. It was the easiest decision I ever made. In other words, when you know your why, the filter is clear. It's not like there are options. The option is obvious. There's only one option. Share, give, inspire. And everything that I've achieved, any success that I've enjoyed, has all been 100% because of the gracious, just amazing generosity of people around me. My friends, my colleagues, people who just believe what I believe. They're the ones who either introduced me to others or took a risk or said, let me try that, or bought a book or watched a TED Talk, or more importantly, sent it to somebody else because they thought they would be inspired by it. For all of the things that I've done over the past decade, I still feel like I'm at the beginning. I've been saying it for 10 years. When everybody says to me, you know, congratulations on X, Y, or Z, my answer is always the same. Tip of the iceberg. And I think that's what keeps me inspired, which is, for me, it's a journey. I'm on the right path. I'm walking past the right mile markers. In other words, I know I'm making progress with the vision that I have to build this world in which the vast majority of people wake up every single morning, inspired to go to work, feel safe when they're there, returning home at the end of the day fulfilled by the work that they do. When I started the race, I ran by myself. And it's lonely, lonely, lonely. And now I got like 1,000 people to the left and 1,000 people to the right, and 1,000 people behind me. And I look around, I'm like, yep, we're gonna change the world. We're gonna change the world. There you go.
So that kind of resonated with me. And as a dentist, I think what we do is all the same. We fix people's teeth. It's doing crowns, doing bridges, doing implants, doing fillings. How we do it, the technique that we do is gonna all be slightly different. But once I kind of defined that why, I think everything else started to make more sense. So my why was I wanted to grow a digital dental practice that allowed my patients to kind of do the best possible care possible, and giving them the opportunity to say yes. So I wasn't gonna, if I saw a lesion, I was gonna essentially inform them and give them the treatment options and allow them to make that decision, not me. And I wanted to kind of grow and learn new skills and improve my efficiencies and really create a dynamite patient experience. So that was kind of my why once I defined it, and you could see all of a sudden kind of that first where I was really, really frustrated, and then when we started defining it and how we did it and what we did, it all of a sudden took off. True abutment has literally been a godsend when it comes to the digital dentistry and especially digital implant dentistry. The first thing, or the first circumstance, or the first reason I found out about them about 4 or 5 years ago was this particular case right here. With the CEREC system, you have, if you want to restore an implant with the CEREC system, you have really one choice of what's called a tie base. So this portion right here, it's 1 millimeter above the implant, and that's really all your choice that you have. And I got back from CEREC level 3, and I remember them teaching us that there's going to be certain circumstances where you can't use this particular system in really narrow circumstances, where the adjacent teeth are very, really small, but also if the doctor puts the implant in more than 1 millimeter subcrustal, this tie base will essentially hit the bone and not allow it to seat properly. So this is one of my first implant crowns that I did, and of course it doesn't seat. And I'm thinking to myself, what the heck's going on? Well, we then had to have the patient back, we had to rescan them up, use a completely different scan body, and get something custom made so it fits like this. But what True Abutment came up with was this system of different tie bases with different heights. So GH1, which is a gingival height 1, GH2, which means the platform of that tie base is 2 millimeters above, a GH3 is 3 millimeters above, and a GH4 is 4 millimeters above, moving the restorative components up higher, therefore allowing it to fit a little bit better. And there's two reasons that we do this. One is to avoid the crustal bone, and the second reason is to really improve the ratio of the crown support. The higher we move it up, the more titanium is in there, and the crown has more support. Confused? You're giving me an inquisitive look over here. So these heights, 1, 2, 3, and 4, you can see, because this implant is slightly subcrustal, this tie base isn't fully seating. What they've come up with is these different heights to allow these tie bases to get moved up and therefore fit properly.
You're talking about the abutment?
Yeah, I'm talking about the abutment. So do you have a CEREC? No. Okay, so then you can ignore the next couple slides. But this was a game changer in the CEREC world. Allowing these different abutments at different heights allowed me to use my CEREC to restore those implants.
So these are pre-made custom?
These are all prefabricated, abutments. But with their scan bodies that they've created, you can open this up to literally anything you can do restoratively with an implant now. So if you want a custom abutment, they will send you a custom abutment. They will mill the custom abutment and then send me back what's called a core file that I can design in the CEREC software. So I don't need to send it to a lab and have the lab do it all. I can still do part of it in-house to save me a little bit of money. Are you using this system?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
The only problem I found, I don't know if you found the same problem,
Yeah.
is if I'm using their scan post and the regular tie base from Sirona, and I don't see the same fitting. If I don't use their
tie base?
Yeah.
If you're using a GH1?
Yeah, I use the GH1. The fitting is okay, just the...
Slightly off?
Yes, and I think the angle, it's the scan post itself. If I'm using their scan post, not the set or the scan
I mean,
post, I think there's a little bit...
A difference? Yeah, so I would stay within, so if you're going to use, yeah.
Then when I use their abutments...
I always say when I'm using bonding agents, I'm keeping everything the same bonding agent to just keep everything by one manufacturer. That's what I recommend.
They said you can use their scan post with any tie base. That's the reason I did it.
Yeah. So with their scan bodies, then you can go to custom abutment. If you want a full titanium crown, they'll make a full titanium crown. If you want an angulated screw channel, so for the anterior case, if you want to do still a screw retained restoration, they can make the angulated screw channel for you as well. They can send you back the core file, or you can also have them make the crown as well. If we're going to be doing angulated an ASC, so for these, for like an all-on X type of restoration, and we need custom all-on X restorations, custom multi-units, they can make custom multi-units for you as well. So it's not just the 17 and 35 degree or straight, they can completely customize them for you. Or if they want you to do a locator and need custom locators, they can make custom locators for an overdenture as well. So you really have the whole gamut of restorative materials. They made it very, very simple. They want that why for them is they wanted to make digital dentists and digital labs their implant workflow as seamless as possible. Those are all the same things. The what is all the same things. The how they do it is slightly different, but their why really resonated with me and kind of why I started working with them. So this kind of just goes over again the different heights. And then they took it one step farther, is if I'm going to be making my own surgical guides with CEREC, you're going to run into several different problems, and I'm going to kind of go over those with you real quick, and how their process with URUS and their custom surgical guides right now have relieved a lot of the issues that can sometimes occur with surgical guides. So this is one of probably the first 30 implants I did in my practice, and I'm trying to make a surgical guide here, and my guide sleeve because this area is so small, I can't get the guide sleeve to fit into the CEREC guide, because this metal piece is going to be hitting these adjacent teeth. So then I have an issue. I can't make this guide in-house. What I could do though, and what they've come up with is called a CEREC Guide 2 kit, and allows you to change where that guide sleeve goes, so you can push it down farther so it doesn't hit and doesn't intersect with this. This guide sleeve can be moved down here, and therefore I can put the implant in. And they've brought that same theory and same process to the Urus Pylon kit.
You make your own, right?
Mm-hmm. So what they did is, in this workflow, they have different length drills that will then fit into the guide sleeve. And they offer courses, a full day course, just on this slide alone. If you don't have a CEREC, so it doesn't really matter for you. So let's kind of get away on how I initially got introduced to true abutment and Urus, and let's talk about just basic implant fundamentals and why, and kind of what you're here for. So where do we want to place it? How do we make sure it stays there? And then how do we eventually, how to make sure it functions, how do we restore it? So really, we're starting with the crown, a crown down approach to planning. The first thing that we're gonna need is an intraoral scanner. The second thing we're gonna need is a CBCT, so we can look at things in 3 dimensions. We can avoid vital structure like nerves. I just had a case yesterday where I thought I had, just taking a PA, oodles of bone in the mandible. But really, where the lingual fossa was, I could only put in like a 6, 7, so I was able to squeeze an 8mm implant in there, just of how this patient's jaw was, with this huge lingual fossa, and had to kind of get creative with how to put it. But if I had a PA, I thought I had 13, 14, 15mm worth of bone until the inferior alveolar nerve. We're looking at buccal plates, and then we're looking at sinuses, and we're wanting to make sure there's enough bone in all 3 dimensions. So I'm going to put a whole bunch of numbers up here. And for those people that are doing it free-handed, I challenge you is, how do you know how deep to put your implant? If you're not starting with a crown down approach. If you don't know where that gingival margin of that crown is, an ideal scenario, we need the top of the implant needs to be 3 or 4mm deeper than that gingival margin. If you don't know where your crown is going to be, you don't know where your implant's going to be. Yeah, you could put it at the crust of the bone, but restoratively, are you going to have enough room? And are you going to get some recession, or are you going to violate that implant biological width with that 3 or 4mm? We need so that's one that you don't know if you're not placing or planning the crown first. All of the other ones you can usually eyeball. 3 or 4mm between implants, 2mm from the implant to the buccal plate, 1.5 mm to 2 mm from the adjacent tooth, and then we want about 1 mm subcrustal. These are kind of the standard measurements now for successful implants. And then we also have to figure about angulation as well. So those are a lot of things that I was when I'm trying to learn, and when I want to do implants at the same level as an implant surgeon, a periodontist, or oral surgeon that's placed 1,000, how am I able to figure this all out and learn that? And that's why I started leveraging technology, leveraging custom abutments, or sorry, custom, and doing it guided. So to kind of review everything, about 2 mm from the implant to the buccal plate, about 1.5 mm adjacent from the adjacent implant, 3 mm between implants, and then again another 1.5 mm from the adjacent tooth.
If you have 2 mm of buccal bone, why would you want to submerge a 2 mm as a standard?
That's what the research is showing, is they still wanted about 1 mm subcrustal.
If you don't have enough buccal bone.
If you don't?
That's the reason. Basically you're predicting some resorption. That's the reason you're submerging. But if you have 2 mm of buccal bone, then
It's just that, I mean, the research is like the no bone loss technique. Yeah, you probably will get some resorption, or if you have plenty of 2 millimeters, they're still recommending it.
Okay. What happens if your gingiva thickness is 4 millimeters, 5 millimeters?
What are we talking about? Buccolingually, depth-wise? What dimension? Depth-wise? Then you, at least 3 millimeters. So if you have more than that, then you're fine. So it's just, these are all minimum distances.
Okay, it's not just straight.
No, it's minimum, yeah, minimum distances. And then that kind of is the same thing, just 3 millimeters below the emergence profile of kind of where you want the emergence profile to be.
Let's say your gingiva thickness is only 1 millimeters. You can suppress for how many?
If you only have 1 millimeter thickness, where is your implant restoration going to be? Start with the implant crown first. That's why you need to plan where the restoration is going to be first to know how deep you're going to do it.
But I think in that case, you would look into grafting, not just placing the implant.
And that, right, or, and this is why I think flapping is needed, because we can reposition flaps. I don't like to do punches. You can put your incision, I'm guessing way lingual, if you don't have enough, and then move that flap over, and essentially you're doing a free gingival graft when you're doing it. You're moving it over.
Yeah, this is
yeah.
a way of the same principle. Just you're increasing the thickness of the gingiva.
Or do a connective. I know a big thing now with anterior implants is they're almost always doing connective tissue grafts with the implant placement at the same time. It's a really big trend with specialists now. It's not a difficult surgery to do. Just harvest some connective tissue, put that in underneath, and then suture everything up around your healing abutment.
Tissue from the TADA?
Yeah. I'm making you think. I like it. So, this is kind of going through, we're asking more about it. If you see this guy on any, like this name on any implant, he's like a bigwig in the implant field. So this is like the connective, no, not the biological width thing, is that we usually typically want about 3 millimeters for around teeth. With around implants, he's come up and essentially said you need about 3.8. So that goes back to that 3 or 4 millimeters that we need, at least that from the implant platform. So if you don't have that, you have to you're either placing the implant a little bit more subcrustal, or you need to get the gum tissue that thick. The other thing is that, just again, the crown down approach is if I know and I'm planning this and I want to do a screw retained crown as much as I can, and I can't when I'm planning this, I either know that I need to then treatment plan for a custom abutment. So I know beforehand when I'm giving these patients treatment plans, I know if I'm going to be able to do a prefab or a custom. So it gives them a better idea of cost. I never like saying I'm going to do a prefab and then try to like back my way into it to get the patient to pay a little bit more. I like having that all pre-planned, and they know in advance of what the cost is going to be. And then we know to ensure that proper depth, or I know beforehand, am I going to need to do some grafting? Am I going to have to put some membranes in to get it to the point where I want? So I have a game plan moving forward on why I like to do crown down approach. And this is a case that was done by my surgeon in my office. And I think this is where guided surgery becomes really, really critical, is that this patient is extremely difficult to work on. Like big fat tongue, big guy, little minimal opening, but because he just has done thousands of these, and I think this is where surgeons get caught up almost all the time, is as soon as they start doing 2, Not only do they have to do all those numbers that I just showed about, 3 to 4 millimeters depth, 2 millimeters from the buccal plate, they now have to look at parallelism and making sure everything lines up. Now we have an issue here. There's no way I can restore this. He barely missed the root on tooth number 29. And trying to restore this is now I call it PETA, a pain in the ass, because of just how these teeth are located, but he didn't do that planning moving forward. And a lot of the surgeons, they don't think of us as restorative dentists. They just want to put implants in there where there's enough bone and then don't care, and then we're trying to do these heroics to get them restored. Or something that I did guided with Eurus is, who wants to restore that? It's a lot easier. And we can get the tissue customized by doing these customized healers because we can do the timing and have all of these pieces already done and prefabricated. So I like to take what's called an ISQ, the implant stability quotient. For those of you that don't know, it's the most objective standard. We put a little peg on an implant, we send a little magnetic frequency, and it gives us an objective number on how stable the implant is. And then if we see this number growing, we know that the bone around the implant it's integrating properly. So if I get a number above 65, I'm okay with, for me, in my hands, I am okay putting a healing abutment on. If I get above 70 and it has a good initial torque, then I know I can actually start loading it and doing some immediate loading cases as well. This particular, just know that in the first 24 hours, you get that primary stability, but then you get some loosening from the 4th day, the necrosis of the pressure necrosis of putting the implant in. So if you do, I wouldn't recommend take the ISQ immediately, but do not touch that implant essentially from the 4th day all the way to the 4th week. And then after the 6-week mark, the bone starts to regrow and you'll start to see these ISQ numbers starting to come up. And if you start taking these numbers at day of placement and then at the restorative time and you see these numbers going up, you know that implant's well integrated and healing like we want it to. There's 2 systems out on the market right now. There is the Austel, which is like who created this ISQ, and then there is another company called Aseptico, which is all the motors that you have. Aseptico has a unit called the Penguin that I use, that I like, because those pegs that go into the implant are sterilizable and you can use them multiple times. And then we were talking about a flap versus a tissue punch. And why I still like, I know there's this non-invasive punch because the patient feels better and heals better, versus by doing a punch. I'm still a proponent of just doing these little mini flaps so I can see where the bone is and ensure my implant is going in the right direction. If I don't flap, I can't see a lot of the stuff. And it also gives me the opportunity to, if I need to graft in a certain spot or if I don't have enough connective tissue, I can reposition that flap to get more gum tissue. Usually I just peel up enough and then put the guide down and then the flap almost goes against the tissue. Or sorry, the guide, yeah. You don't need much. You very little flap to kind of to flap it enough to get the guide out of the way.
So the flap, the gum will not interfere with the sealing of the guide.
Correct. No. With their system right now, and the moving of where if you need to move the sleeve, and then just pushing the flap up, just get enough, just get much more release, and you can get the flap to essentially lie across, lie on top of the guide. So why the tissue punch? It's easy, it's minimally invasive. This is a particular case where you think I have oodles of bone here, and you can see I went way subcrustal. I did that because I'm measuring 3 or 4 millimeters to the margin. I've designed this crown and where I want to put it, so I know that's where the emergence is. I remember this particular case, and why I show this is when I flapped this, it was grafted a couple months earlier. When I flapped it, a whole bunch of that particular bone, where you think I have plenty of bone here, almost all of this bone essentially came out with my flap. And when I placed it, literally where I had planned to place it, it was where the crestal bone was. If I didn't flap that, I wouldn't have seen that that implant, the bone graft wasn't particular or like fully integrated, and it would have been in some loose bone there. It would have probably been fine, but it's something that I just want to see, especially if I'm going subcrustal a little bit. And the other thing is I use a bone profiling system. So after every implant, I go in real quick with the bone profiler, because those tie bases that I want to get to emerge, those GH1, GH2, GH3, GH4, I want to be able to make sure I have enough room to get those tie bases to fit properly. And the nice thing about these kits here is they have a bone profiler built into the kit.
Yeah, that's what I want to say. Not all kits have bone profiler.
Yeah, this one does. Yeah, this one does.
Do you use the osteocondensing drills?
The Densa ones, the Densa burrs. I've started now implementing them in my, we're going to talk about the sinus bump kit. I will actually add freehand a sinus bump kit, or sorry, the Densa burrs in that system. And you'll see a couple cases at the end where I've been recently doing it in the year, where I will use that. I will do the initial pilot holes with the guided, and then go in freehanded to do that.
The last 2 drills, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
What size are they?
That's a 4.8 by 8, I think, or a 4.8 by 9. This is an Astra implant, but I picked this particular case because another reason why I flap. And then let's talk about abutment swapping real quick. Is every time we take off an abutment and put it back on, we're opening the implant platform to more bacteria. This is a lot of this is in theory right now. But especially if you're doing temporization and you're taking them on, taking it off, taking it on, taking it off, putting an impression coping on and off multiple times. Every time you do that, the connection that biological implant with gets disrupted, and they started to see some bone loss occur the more and more times you have to take stuff on and off. So what I've done to try to eliminate that as much as possible, that bacterial contamination, is to take final impressions or final optical scans at the time of surgery. So I will, once the implant's in there, I know it's well integrated, my ISQ values are nice and high, I will put on my true abutment scan body, I will take a CEREC prime scan, scan it, and then I will design my final restoration, have it made, and then put it in their file to be delivered in 2 or 3 months, depending on how well the stability is and how well the ISQ numbers are.
But then the digital impression of the tissue itself, how do you take it?
I just make it ideal.
Not with the scan.
I don't worry about it. I just make it ideal, and I have really no issues with it.
How can you see the ideal?
I take a before, before I flap, I will take a before, and then I will have an after with my scan body standing up, and I then can have a general idea of where I want that to go.
If your ISQ is not 60 or above, you don't do the scan.
No, I will let that puppy integrate, because I've done it where it was questionable, and I've tightening the scan bodies, and it moves, and I'm like, okay, I'm out. So I will bury it? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So my solution is take the final impression, or I'm going to call it now my final optical scan. You can't, if you're doing it with impressions, I wouldn't do this with impressions because you're getting stuff in there. If you're doing it with optical scans, you can absolutely do it because all you need is the top 1/3 of that scan body, and you can do this very, very repeatably. That's what they're saying is, so if I can do something, okay, the research is starting to show that it may be. But second, I don't have to have them come back in for another appointment and less chair time. Therefore, I'm more productive and more profitable. So I think there's 2 reasons I'm doing it. Probably more. I'm probably doing it 80% because it's more profitable and predictable or efficient. I'm probably doing it 20% because the science is starting to show it that. Yep. They come out, we take out the healing abutment. I do a quick ISQ, make sure my number's going up, and then I will put the crown in.
The crown won't impinge the soft tissue?
So another reason why I think the timing is important. You saw me using custom healing abutments. So I can then mold the tissue to the exact same way I want that crown to form. And they can all have all of that done with the custom healing abutments, have everything pre-planned because we know the timing of the implant when we're putting it in there. So I can get the tissue 90% of the way, so when I can go in, everything fits. The tissue isn't getting blanched because the tissue is growing around. They make the custom healing abutments to the emergence profile of how you want that crown to come out. So that's why timing is critical now.
What does affect your decision in making immediate versus like 2 stages?
Immediate restoring?
Yeah.
It'll be how well it torques in, and then what the ISQ level shows.
So if the ISQ 75 and above or
70 and above for me. I don't always. If it's in the anterior and they're aesthetically driven, I will. If it's in the posterior, I don't care. I don't want to have to do a multiple surgery if they start wiggling on it or loading it.
But you know, I mean, the marketing now pressure of immediate patients want the tooth at the same day.
I was like, do you want something predictable? Do you want to then, if it doesn't work, do you want to wait another 4 to 8 months? Because then I have to take it out, graft it. Is it worth the possibility? Now, I've done it, and I'm going to show a case where I've done it.
Yeah, I've done it as well, but it takes only 1 failure to
start. Right. Absolutely. That's why it's a dental practice. We're learning as much as they are. So, you're absolutely correct. Now let's talk about surgical guides real quick, and we can do it really one of 2 ways. One is in office, where we are making them ourselves, or we can have the lab do it. Everything that I'm going to talk about and what you're seeing with this kit, Urus and True Abutment have to do. That's all on their end. We can do it in office. We can either mill it, or we can then print it. The nice thing about in-office is if someone wants to have something same day, it will take me a little bit of time, but we can do it same day. If they come in the morning, I can have it in the afternoon, or if they come in the afternoon and want to do it in the next morning, great. Cost effective, it's a little bit cheaper. Right now, on how it currently works is in my office, I can only do singles, so single implants. If I have to do more than that, 2 or 3 implants, it has to be made, and then I can mill it or I can print it, 3D printed. Correct, so that's a lot of work. So then I was like, let's do the easy button. And the other thing is you have to create everything. You have to go into the CBCT, you have to design the crown, the theoretical crown, you have to merge it with the CBCT, you then have to plan it yourself. And I don't know about your office, all my guides, my office staff always seems to put all my guides on like a Monday afternoon. And then I have like 5 guides that I have to then go ahead and like design, and my wife's not happy because then I'm there after work, like trying to design all these guides. So now there's the easy button, and that's what's called the lab fabricated surgical guide, where all I need is the CBCT, I need the STL file with your intraoral scanner, and then we send that all to Urus, and they take care of everything from there. You can do multiple implants, you can do fully timed, less work, and they print them, I'd say 99% of the time. So I'm showing you this just on how long it takes me to do this particular case. So I have my STL file, and you're going to see I make a mistake already. I have it labeled for tooth number 30, but I'm doing tooth number 29. I'm going to fix that real quick. I deleted it. Now I switched to tooth number 29, and now I'm going to start guiding on where I want that crown to be. So I know exactly where my margin in an ideal scenario is going to be. And so I'm looking at my gingival margin here, and I want my gingival margin for this emergence right around the same place. So then we know we want my implant about 3 millimeters deeper, 3 to 4 millimeters deeper than that.
So you choose now the restoration as a crown here?
Yeah, I will call it. The new version, you have to call it, I don't know what version you're on.
The latest one, 5.3.
5.3, then you have to go into the left-hand side and label it implant guide, like a guide. It's called a guide.
Implant guide.
Yeah. Right.
Implant restoration, you will not have that option.
Right. You're right. You're right. So now I have my 2 implant crowns, my 2 ideal crowns on how I want them to be right now. I'm going to take this file. I'm getting everything perfect so I can see what it looks like. I'm adjusting my contacts. I really probably didn't need to adjust the contacts in this particular case, but I am. And then export this. It's called an SSI file for the CEREC workflow. Now I'm merging this with the CBCT that I have. This is SEDEC. This is the old. These are like a couple years ago. This is the old version of CCAT. It is now. It used to be called Sedexis. I'm mapping my nerve, and I think this particular case too. There's a huge lingual fossa down there where you think you have a bunch of bone on the X-ray, the PA, which I'm going to show next. But if I remember this particular case, there's a pretty big lingual fossa there. So this is the crown I just designed, and then we're merging it, and we have to pick like points, 3 like points for a tripod effect to get these 2 scans to stitch properly. So we're making sure the stitch is all done correctly and that there's a good integration between the 2 and there's not some distortion. I'm now putting my sleeves in. Oh no, sorry, I'm putting in tooth number 30 now, the second implant, or so the second crown. Doing the same kind of 3 points. And now that we have the crowns in place, we're going to start planning the implant. So you see this takes some time. So in the software, in the CCAT software, they may not have Urus in there quite yet. It's the same body and the same shape as a hyosin implant. So I picked the hyosin implant because it's the same shape. And then we'll start putting the implant in there. And then you're going to see me start, I'm going to angle it to make sure it's coming out the central fossa or the central groove of those implants. And then I'm making sure, you see I'm putting it way deeper than just 1 millimeter deeper than the bone. It's because I'm going to start measuring, and you can see that 3.94. The implant restoration, the gingival margin, down to the implant platform. We need it around 3 to 4 millimeters. I'm going to do it again here. To me, I'm off by 0.6 of a millimeter. I'm okay. And then we're doing the measurement to the buccal bone as well. And I'm going to have to definitely profile some bone there. So now we're going to do the same thing. And then the nice thing is you can get this to go parallel to 29. So your emergence profile and they're parallel to each other. So you don't run into the case where you could see my surgeon essentially having 2 implants that are running into each other. Correct, yeah. So you're gonna see me tilt it a little bit so I can get away. See me trying to line it up a little bit more mesial so it then comes out the central fossa, the central groove of the 30. I'm now measuring between the implants, making sure I have more than 3 millimeters, all those numbers that we just talked about. And now I'm just going around making sure there's enough bone in all 3 dimensions. So that takes some time, and that's just the planning phase. That's not the actual fabrication of the surgical guide. So that's what this case ended up looking like. You can see right now those are custom healing abutments. So I can get the emergence profile because of the guides have timing involved. I can get those put on, and then I can get my tissue to grow like I want it to, so I can take the final impressions knowing that the crowns will fit and not impinge the tissue. So fully guided, fully timed. 1 is we can get the proper placement of the implant. 2, these surgeries can be super quick. I'm literally going boing, boing with the same osteotomy burrs. Like that literally takes me about 30, maybe 3 or 4 minutes longer to place the second implant than just doing a single one. And because of the timing, we can have prefabricated custom healers, or we can even go to making temporaries. We can get custom abutments. We can get prefabricated abutments with a crown that goes on top, if we need to go to that point. So here's a particular case that I've seen this lady like multiple times from multiple falls. So this is number 1. She fell. We're going to need to extract this tooth, and then she's broken a whole bunch of anterior teeth for falling. We take that out, we graft it, and then she decided to do a bridge at this point in time, so we got her to this. She then decided to fall again, and now the bridge came out. So now we're needing to do implants in the anterior. So we did all of these implants, boom, 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 got them nice and parallel, got custom tissue healers. At this point, I didn't feel comfortable immediately loading these cases.
How do you temporize it?
That's a flipper. She's already in a flipper. She's already in a flipper already because of the broken and the broken bridge, and she broke off like buccal plates. So I needed to do some significant grafting in membranes, and I didn't want it.
So my question is, why did you place 3 implants, not like 2?
I could have.
Okay.
I absolutely could have. So for her, I think cost really wasn't a concern. If cost is a concern, it's going to be. But she also doesn't show it. So those are all considerations. Absolutely. In this particular case, we got 3 implants in there. Did custom healers. The tissue is kind of, you can see, I had taken off before I got the picture. You can kind of see it collapsing, but you can kind of see a general, we're getting the tissue. Yeah. We put our scan bodies in. This is one I think I waited. I didn't immediately do it just because I think one of them had like an IS, like a 65, yeah. And then we get, this particular case, because I know I can't get the emergence through the lingual, and you can see the gums are all over the place in this particular case, but that's kind of the final for her. Let's talk about implants themselves.
These implants were yours?
Yours are all yours. Yeah.
So yours and Tyson are interchangeable even with the...
So, no. So the shape of the implant is almost identical to hyacinth. The internal connection is not. And that's what I'm gonna, you're right where I am. So right now, this is the scientific, essentially, what all the research papers are looking for as far as an ideal implant. So we want a platform switch. I'm gonna go through each one of these in a second. We have a conical connection. We have, ideally, we want good initial stability. It torques in nice. And then we have high SQ values when we take it initial. And then we have a bunch of size and length options. A lot of these implants is I can find these implants with all of these, but all of a sudden when I get to size and length options, I can't do it guided. Right now, like 3.0s implants, most companies don't have a 3.0 guided. And those are, to me, that's when I usually need it. When I'm putting something in really small, that's when I need a guide. The nice thing is they will go down to a 3.0 implant and they can do it completely guided, fully guided. So that the implant also goes through the guide. For me, 2 extra bonuses is that there's some digital workflows, and then the guided kits, which is talked about with the 3.0 implant.
So the previous case that you designed on the CEREC, you could have just sent a file to them and they
did it. So the reason I showed that video, how long it takes me, I ended up sending it to them because one is because it was two guides or 2 implants. I can't do with CEREC right now. I can only do 1 implant. So I would have to have made 2 guides and switch those guys out, and it just isn't an efficient surgery.
But I mean, if you have already decided to send to them, you'll just send them.
Yes, I will send them an STL file and then in a CBCT, and they will take care of all of this. If they have any questions, like on this particular case, we were getting like close in a couple areas. So they called me, we did a team viewer, and we kind of moved some implants around to get ideal scenarios, or what I was comfortable with. But all of that can be done.
And they did the restorative work, or you sent it?
That particular case, I sent it out. I think they did the custom abutments, and then they sent me back the custom abutments, and I did the crowns on top. Yeah. So Eurus has kind of taken everything that's out there in the literature and kind of put it together in this one implant. One is the Morse taper. So essentially the conical connection. That's really kind of the standard right now, is having that conical connection because it creates a hermetic seal and eliminates the micro gap, and there's less micro movement of the implant itself with the abutments. That helps with getting less bone loss around the implant. The other thing is the platform switching. So it's not a straight connection. There's a little, essentially an in bevel at the top of the implant, at the platform, and that helps with biological width as well, and actually getting some bone growth above the implant platform. So how we work with Eurus right now is we take the CBCT and we do the digital impression, and we send that all to them via the cloud, via their portal, which is euruslogin.com. They go ahead and design it, and they ask you, do you want prefabricated component or custom components that are going to be done before the surgery? And then they will fabricate this custom guide and all of the custom healers, the temporary restorations prior to the surgery, and then they will send that back to you, and it takes them about 2 weeks. Here's a pretty straightforward case. We took out some retained primaries, primary molar teeth, and then kind of set this patient up for implants on 4 and 13. Now there are a few more drills, osteotomy drills in their protocol. It's something that you're just going to have to get used to. You do not need to use all of them. It's just their recommendation. It does not take me that long to get through all of these. But what we do is if you want a tissue punch, you can do a tissue punch. It's not my philosophy, but you can. A little dimple of a bone. These are called just the path drills to get almost kind of another version of these little dimples. So there's no skiving or deviations. And then you start going through these, and all you have to do is just go to depth. You just go to depth, and that's all you need to do. And you go through these based off of their protocol, which you will see kind of a nice linear pattern when you go through it. Now this is the most important part, and why I've started and why I will start on all of the slides here. This is something a little bit different, which is called the guide offset. When we put the implant in, this is where we have to be concerned about the depth. We just can't go fully or you'll go too deep. There's different lines on this. The 9.5, 11, or 12.5. It's 1.5 millimeter increments. What that allows them to do is that guide sleeve, when all of a sudden sometimes it runs into adjacent teeth or you don't have enough room, it gives them 3 millimeters of wiggle room either up or down to move that guide sleeve to allow us to fit the implants in. So in narrow cases where you need like a 3.0 implant and all of a sudden the adjacent teeth are there and the guide sleeves don't fit, that 3 millimeters of wiggle room allows them to then place this in a different spot. It's going to be confusing and it's all theoretical until we start playing with the kits after lunch. That's where it becomes really, really important, and why their guided system is like top notch. So each of these protocols will have, it's usually 9.5. That's their go-to, but it can be an 11 or a 12.5 if needed. And if you look through your protocols in front of you, you'll see they've given us different ones, like an offset of 9.5, but then an offset of an 11, and it corresponds to different lines here for that. It's in this one right here. An offset of 9.5, an offset of 11, and an offset of 12.5. So, the other thing is the timing. We've talked about depth, now we're going to talk about the timing to make sure the hexes line up. On all of the guides, they're going to have a little notch here. That notch then corresponds with the black notch here. If you do those and get those timed correctly, all of the components that they've custom fabricated before the surgery will fit into place. And that's where like if you're doing immediate load or immediate temporization, this is very critical, that if you're doing it free-handed, you can't do. This gets it down to the exact angulation and the timing that we need. So to kind of review everything, there's what's called a fixture level. This is with with the actual dry, like a handpiece. And then they have, when you bring out the torque wrench and hand torque it, you can also do it with that. And just the different numbers here. So if you're going all the way to that 9.5 that we just talked about, that's here. The 9.5 on the implant, the torque wrench drivers, is this line right here. So they're different for each driver, and we'll go through all of this when we do hands-on. And then this is the kit. This is the kit that's in front of you guys right now. But you kind of start down here, tissue punch, and then the initial dimple drills. And then if you follow the protocol, you kind of work your way up and then kind of over, depending on the implant they're using. The nice thing about the Urus system as well is there's 2 restorative platforms. It's narrow, which is the 3 and the 3.5, and then anything above a 3.5, a 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6, and I think I just saw like a 6.5 or 7 millimeter implant. I don't know why you would ever need that, but they have it. All of essentially 4 and above is their regular connection. So I hate implant systems where every implant has a different restorative platform, and then you need way more stuff in your office than you really need to. From a restorative standpoint, is they really thought things through and tried to keep things as simple as possible. The really part that gets a little bit people confused is the timing, and then also that offset, but there's a reason behind it, and it's really critical. And then you can see the bone profiling kits up here. So the connection, all the connections either yellow or green. These are the yellow or green, depending on if it's narrow or regular. And then if we're going to be doing some immediate placement, so extraction and then placing the implant, they have these extraction socket drills that kind of help section the tooth if you need to, And then you can do your osteotomies through that, or do the extraction of the implant, section it, take out the teeth, and then do the osteotomy so you don't wear out these burrs. And we'll go through all of this. So this is the particular case where we did kind of the retained primers we extracted, and then we're going to put in the implants. You're going to see the custom, scan bodies that we took at the surgery. You can see those are the little mini flaps that I did. We scanned that. We put the custom healing abutments on. So you can see when we're putting the custom healing abutments on, there's a little notch, this small little notch here. This one's a little bit easier to see. The notch here, that then lines up straight buckle, and those are all fabricated before the surgery because of the timing. And that's how we get our tissues to grow in an ideal fashion, and why we can take stuff the day of. I will then take the scan, I will fabricate my crowns. You can see the screw access holes are coming straight out the occlusal like we want them to. And patient comes in like that the day of, or at the end of surgery like that. And then 2.5 to 3 months later, we can put the implant crowns in. Questions so far? I'm going to take a quick break.
How do you section that with the tooth, like by using
The extraction socket drills?
let's say tooth number 19, what do you section?
I'll show you. This next case, it's a premolar, but you would use the extraction socket drills to put the guide in. Essentially, put the guide in, put that through, and when you do that, it sections, creates an osteotomy and sections the tooth at the same time.
Basically, when you're doing the implant surgery.
Yeah, you could do that. If you're doing immediates, that's what that's designed for. Let's take about a 5-minute break. I'm gonna run to the restroom real quick. And then we'll kind of do some videos of the surgery being done, talk about the timing, the offsets, and then we're gonna switch over to sinuses as well. Okay, 5 minutes.
Well, for the final time this season, I'm Jeff Kraft, and welcome to another episode of True Abutments Interview. First off, I want to start by saying thank you so much for tuning in each week as we've brought you some amazing stories from dentists, dental lab owners, educators, but on this episode, it's a little bit special. I wanted to bring you to Irvine, California, the headquarters of True Abutment, to introduce you to the people that make this great company tick and made it such a joy for me to be a part of. Come on. I always love coming here to True Abutment, and of course seeing Katie.
Hey, Jeff.
How are you?
I'm good.
You know, we look like a couple of Christmas ornaments right now.
Yes.
I got the red, you got the green.
I love it. I love it. And hey, this is the main seminar room I told you about. And this is one of the reasons why we actually chose this building. We're trying to focus more on educating dentists, inviting them to really learn our workflow and actually meet the team and stuff right here. Do you see this?
Right there. Awesome. These are pool sticks. There's like 30 different pool sticks made into really a piece of art. And this entire building really is an architectural masterpiece.
It really is. So speaking of the seminar space, we actually have a second area over here with 12 workstations with all the computers and software set up for the dentist to learn hands-on.
Yeah, I guess so. You know what I love about this building? Not only that it's beautiful just visually, but I mean visually you can see outside Irvine, beautiful Southern California through, there's so many windows here.
Yes, I love it. I love it. It's beautiful. And guess what? We're approaching our marketing room.
Oh man,
and here we come. I have Waylon and Naya to introduce you to.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Naya. How are you?
Nice to see you.
All right, so I'm going to chat with you, Naya, because Waylon's working on something really important. I don't know what it is. Tell me, what is it you do with the company here at True Abutment?
I am the photographer and content coordinator here on our marketing team. So on any given day, I could be designing an email blast or editing photos, but the work never stops.
Yeah, it never stops. With True Abutment, the interview aspect, what do you like about the episodes?
Well, one of my favorite parts of the interview is just the connection that you get to see and that our team captures. We have a great chemistry here on our marketing team, so it's lovely to see that also at other businesses that we work with and our clients as well. So
yeah, and I gotta say, your photos are always amazing, by the way.
Jeff. Yeah.
Waylon, you're not gonna get away from this interview. How long have you been with True Abutment?
I've been with True Abutment for about 5 months now.
Okay, fairly new, fairly new. What do you like best about the episodes?
I really love how we're able to get a better insight with our clients, and we get to really see how they function and work.
Yeah, it really is. You know, notice he didn't mention me at all. You know, that's fine. Get back to work, you guys. Get back
Come on, Jeff. Let's go. Let's go. I'm going to take you away
Okay.
from these people. So that is our accounting
Oh,
department.
that's how I get paid. Okay.
Hey, HR.
HR. I'm in there a lot. I get in trouble quite a
And our
bit.
CEO's room.
That's John's office.
Yes, he's not
We
there.
go-
No. And this is the sales department.
Oh, got
and
it.
Hey, Oliver is waiting for us. I'm gonna
Oliver.
just leave you two at it.
All right, I'll meet
See
you.
soon.
I'll meet you down the hallway.
Okay.
Oliver, how
are
you
you
doing?
doing, Jeff?
Good
Doing
to
good.
see you. Good to see you.
too.
All right, I want to chat with you because your story is quite a bit different than most of the rest of the team that's here at True Abutment. You're actually a dentist in Europe. You came over to the States and you teamed up with True Abutment. Tell me about how this all got started.
Yeah, that's exactly the way it is. So basically, I was always interested in dentistry. Finished school there, practiced dentistry for about 2 years, and then I moved here with my family. So definitely wanted to get back into dentistry here again. And I just found True Abutment, started working with them, and it's been a great journey since then.
So what do you like most about coming to work? It's obviously a fantastic team. It's a very diverse team, which I really love. What's your favorite parts about coming to work?
Just, you know, like coming every day and like, you know, like hanging out with all the guys here, you know, doing a lot of hard work, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And, you know, like seeing the company like growing and improving every day, you know, that's definitely like something that I enjoy a lot.
Such a big asset to the team here at True Abutment. Hey, nice chatting with you.
Same here.
I'm sure you got something going on. I don't
Definitely.
understand
Lots of
dentistry.
calls.
Lots
Yeah.
of calls?
Yeah.
There you go. Want to come meet up with Katie? I'm coming.
Oh, there you are.
He's a good guy. I like chatting with Oliver.
Good. I'm glad you guys had fun. And hey, this is the customer care department
Busy
and
in
our
here.
last hall. Yes, this is the busiest section in the building. And hey, there are Angelina and Aria.
Angelina and Ari, I'm going to
Yeah.
chat with them. All right,
Sure.
I'll see you in a bit.
Okay.
How are you guys?
Good, how are you?
Nice to see you. Nice to see you. All right, Aria, tell me your story. How long have you been with True Abutment?
Roughly 7 months, not too long.
Okay, so not too long. What about you?
For the guide, how did you build that piece inside? How do you charge?
I just every implant surgery I have a implant fee guided fee. I think it's like $450 or $500.
It doesn't matter whether you mill it yourself, I mean in-house or you send.
Just standard. I haven't had ever a patient flinch or push back on it.
And you don't bill it to the insurance service?
No, that's just a out of pocket for the patient.
How about for the custom healing department? How do you bill it as well?
No,
It's part
they're
of
not.
the
They're
implant
not
fees.
that. Yeah, that's not much. I think they're like $45 or $50. If you look at the cost of, I think they're like usually like 30 or 40 for if you have to buy one with your stock one. So it's not that drastically different. I mean, the implants are fairly affordable too.
Yeah.
So that you're going to be saving a little bit of money there compared to I call the premium implants, the Straumann's, the Astras, the Nobel Biocares. So, all right, so here's the one that we did, extraction, immediate placement with a custom healer. So 2 reasons why this came in handy again. This is going to be a tight space, so we're probably not going to be able to get the guide sleeve to fit properly with my normal guide. If we're able to then move that up by changing the offset a little bit, we can then be a little bit more predictable, and you're going to actually see me forget in the surgery that I did that. So this particular surgery, the surgery was set with an offset of an 11, that meaning I had to go a little bit deeper when I'm placing my implant. I forgot about it, and you're going to see what happens at the surgery. One, all of a sudden I start doing it. I took some optical scans thinking I'm done, and then I looked at it and I was like, the threads aren't completely, the threads are exposed. And I had already taken an ISQ. The ISQ was like in the mid 60s, and I was like, this one am I going to load? I realized it, and I put a little bit deeper. All of a sudden my ISQs go up. We're getting above 70, and then I feel comfortable getting to that point for this particular patient. So this is where you were talking about if in theory, well, let me just get to it. So this is kind of what I had planned for it. And if you're getting into doing these guides at first, or getting into guided surgery and placing the and kind of doing this in theory, I highly recommend, if you have the capability, which most CBCTs do in their software, is to place them yourself in theory and then send it to URIS and have the technicians here that are doing like 40 or 50 or 60 of these a day and have so much more experience, see what your plan lines up with their plan is. And then if you want to start doing them in-house, that's a great way to learn on looking at these and what they look for as well. So this is one that I pre-planned myself. And then this is the report that comes back from them. So it's the implant, the manufacturer, the type, the size of the implant, a 4x10. And then a green, which means it's going to be their regular restorative platform. I think you walked out, there's 2 types of restorative platforms. Narrow, which is yellow, which is a 3 and a 3.5. And anything bigger than a 4 is a green regular platform. And then this is kind of their safety zones, which they are 2 millimeters apically, and then 1.5 millimeters adjacent. So this is the protocol that they then send as well. This is where they're all of a sudden telling us to use the socket drills. In this particular case, I really don't need a socket drill because it's a single rooted tooth. If it was a molar and I'm doing an immediate extraction and an immediate placement, I would have definitely used these, because you can go in there, section the tooth with these, get the tooth out, and then go back in with the osteotomy burrs. So you're not wearing these burrs out by drilling through tooth structure. And then again, I told you already, but I highlight this every single time. The guide sleeve offset is an 11, so we're going a little bit deeper when we're placing the implant, and I will show you on the guides and on the implant drivers what that 11 looks like. It's the second, and they tell you here as well, the second line. So this is offset right here is 9.5. This one where they have the line right now is an 11. And then above that would be 12. And then we want the timing of the implant, this gray line here, to match up with the notch that's going to be on the guides as well, to make sure we get the timing completely correct.
Do you do pre-test the patient's opening and the fitting?
Yeah, so before I even get the patient numb, the guide's going on. In this particular case, because the tooth's in there, it's not going to fit. So, and I always tell patients whenever I'm doing immediate extractions, my primary goal is to get the tooth out with the bone graft in. Everything else is a cherry on the top. If we get the implant in there, great, but I never tell them with 100% certainty that I'm doing both. And that also goes with immediate temporization. So, So this is what the socket drill would look like. The socket drill would go to the base of the tooth. That's all it's meant for, is to get all of the tooth structure out of there if we're sectioning it. So this is the second extraction drill. And then now we're going to start doing osteotomies. And we go a little bit deeper, and then a little bit deeper, and now we go wider. And this is kind of the goal and the plan as it goes along. And then the other thing that they do, I'm going to go backwards a couple steps, is down here it says soft bone, normal bone, and hard bone, depending on how dense that bone is. They will then give you an idea, and they can usually tell based off of the CT on how dense they expect it and where you think you're going to go. So if it's super soft, we're going to make those osteotomies a little bit smaller. If it's super dense and it's torquing in too early, if we're halfway down and it's already torquing out at 40 or 50, we need to back that implant up and widen our osteotomies and deepen our osteotomies a little bit.
So depends on the bone density, you end up at 3.0, soft bone.
Yep. If it's soft, if it's medium or normal, you're going to end up in that 3.4 range. And then if it's super dense, you're going to be at the 3.9. We're going all the way up to a 3.9, all the way for a 4.0 implant. So these are things that they built in. So kind of this is the whole protocol. The last 3 or 4 drills, it'll just depend on how dense that bone is. So that's kind of this is the last, that's a 3 by 11.5, 3, 4 by 10. So it's going to be one more drill after this that doesn't go quite all the way to the apex, but we're widening it for the body of the implant. And then the implant goes in, and you can see we're going again to the 11 millimeter offset here. So this is the case that we did on kind of a live. All I did on the editing of these videos is I just, it's twice as fast. So it's very basic editing. I'm popping off the crown here real quick. I use a piezoetome for some of my extractions, especially if I'm don't want to break off buccal plates. So I'm going to use a piezoetome real quick. If you don't know what a piezoetome is, it's just like a little elevator on steroids. It's almost like a little jackhammer elevator. It goes in and you kind of do these pumping actions real quick, sprays a lot of water, and you kind of just pump up and down. It's almost like you're elevating around the tooth. Wiggles these teeth come out really, really easily when I use it. Piezoetome. It doesn't hurt nerves. It won't cut nerves. It won't cut soft tissue. All it does is cut bone. It won't even cut tooth structure. So you kind of go where you're kind of try to get your elevator in. That's where you're looking for that PDL space, and just do these pumping actions all around circumferentially around the tooth, and you slowly get deeper and deeper and deeper. Then I usually create enough space for my elevator to kind of pop these teeth out. It's great with little root tips too. When I always see these videos, I'm like, hey, I wish my hands moved that fast since it's like double speed. Tooth out, curette it, irrigate it. And now we can try on the guide. For me, if the guide doesn't fit, I usually am aborting the surgery with it. But I don't think I've had a guide not fit with yours.
You don't use the piezoetome post surgery in the socket to remove the remaining.
I don't. I usually don't. I'm actually, the course I'm taking for my lateral sinus course, they use a lot of, for that, laterals. Are you doing laterals? Yeah. So I'm excited because I think they use the same brand or one that I already have. So we're trying on the guide right now. And you can kind of see those notches on the guide sleeve. That's telling us the timing of the implant. That's what we're looking for and then that's when we know that all the prefabricated custom healers will fit. And all of the osteotomers, you just go to full depth and the drill will stop. There's like a little sleeve, like bumper system that you just go full depth. In your initial prescription, you can tell them the size that you prefer, and then they usually try to go by the size, but they can make that decision fully by themselves if you want them to.
And then when they send the guide back, they indicate.
Absolutely, they give you a full surgical report on the size, the length, the offset. Essentially, what's in front of you right now, every single case comes back with that. So they recommend placing it, of course, with the handpiece, and then switching it out and doing hand torquing it. And there's two separate. There's the implant, the motor drivers, and then also the torque wrench drivers. And this is where I don't go full and up deep enough. I forget. I went to the 9.5 offset instead of the 11. You're going to see me start going down. Doing some stuff too early, prematurely, and then doing it all over again. And I'm also needing to bone graft a little bit as well, because it's the immediate extraction. And I wouldn't use the bone grafting material I use on this particular case anymore. I use the Ossix bone, which is like a spongy bone. I've switched now to more cortical cancellous mixed with PRF. So you guys saw the 65 real quick? That's kind of right on that borderline. You're going to see me, I think, put on the scan bodies, where I start scanning. And I also couldn't take I usually take an optical scan before I do the surgery. In this particular case, I can't because the tooth was in the way. But most of the time, while they're getting numbed up, my assistant is scanning them up and having that all done. So then all I have to do at the end of the surgery is scan them up real quickly. The CEREC system, the Prime scan, I think, run, depending on if there's any specials or deals, I think like 55 or 60. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I used to use the Omnicam.
Yeah.
They have trade-in offers.
They always have trade-in offers. So if you have another intraoral scanner, you can always trade it in. I think the intraoral scanner, it's also, do you want to do DI only? Meaning digital impression only. I think that's down into like the 40 range, 40 or 45. Then there's the software that allows you to design and do restorations, which is another 20,000, and then you would have to get the mill. So now you see me going a little bit deeper. I'm now going to the offset that I should have been. Then we're...
You drilled already deeper.
Yeah, I did, right. Yes, yeah, exactly. So now I'm doing the ISQ again, and you're going to see it's now in like the 71, 72 range. 73, 74. Just by a millimeter and a half.
Smart pick or the Hyoscine one, right?
They are no, because it's it all has to do with the connection. Urus has their own connection. Yeah. You buy the peg through Aseptico. Aseptico has this huge file of every single implant out there, and it tells you the number that you need to buy.
So they have the Urus system.
Yes, they already have the Urus system. So now I'm rescanning it because I've already torqued it in a little bit farther and the timing has changed. And the one thing with this is you can't freehand the final torque because you need the timing and you need it to match up. So you have to take off the guide, make sure it's in the right spot, and then kind of go back and forth a couple times. And then the delivery of the custom healer, it's usually pretty straightforward. Just essentially put it in, just like a regular healing abutment. We take a shade to make the final crown, and then we're going to start suturing her up. Oh, bone grafting. Like I said, I wouldn't use this bone grafting material anymore. I haven't had great success with it. It's like a spongy synthetic material. It's just always hard when you're grafting immediate sites to kind of get the bone into the spot that you want. So I'm going to kind of jump ahead, but that's kind of the final case. And then the final restoration, you can see the access hole coming out right where we want it. So I'm going to go back a few years on how we used to restore implants, especially in the aesthetic zone, and how tedious and challenging it was. So if they're placing we take an impression, we need to do a stone model, we need to do a temp crown, or we just freehand that temporary inside the mouth. Then we need to take another impression, we need to make some type of custom healer with the impression coping on there. And then we take a stone model, then we do the final restoration. If we have the digital aesthetic workflow, we can scan at the time of surgery, we can do a temp crown, we can scan, and then we can make the restoration. And if we need 3D printed models, we can do that as well. This is a particular case where this is like 5 or 6 years ago where I wasn't placing implants yet, but this is a case where we can scan before the extraction. In this particular case where I'm showing you Doug's case. And because of his bite, we were able to make a Maryland bridge with the CEREC machine without having to make a flipper, just because of his bite. We scan the implant placement, we make a custom healer at the implant placement, we scan, we then make the restoration. I liked my temporary crown so much that I just used that initial impression and then it made the final restoration off of that. So I know that's a whole bunch of information. This is kind of in the old, like I thought this was a snazzy way of doing stuff. Now we've even upped it, and I'm going to show you a case where we've upped it with having everything prefabricated done by Urus beforehand. So scan the patient, we make a custom healing abutment. At the time of surgery, patient comes over, sees me after the surgery is done, we put this on, and then I take about 20 to 30 minutes and I have the CEREC machine give me this. I couldn't immediately load this particular patient because the surgeon didn't want me to. That was a lot to do. But what I wanted is I still wanted to make a temporary, the restoration that I was making as close to the final as possible. So I knew that if everything looked good, I could use that design that I had just made and then just turn it into a final restoration material. So I did that, took some extra time, and what I do with this pencil is that's where I know that I want to cut it off and turn this temporary now into a custom healing abutment. So I cut it off, have that, and then I will cement the Maryland bridge over the top, and the patient in about 2.5 hours leaves like that. Now it's not the most hygienically and aesthetically pleasing where the junction of the Maryland bridge and the custom healer is, but I think the patient's much happier with that than having a flipper in there at this point. We'll then, in about 2.5 to 3 months, once everything is integrated, create a custom abutment out of Emacs, and then that's kind of the before and after where the PFM and the post broke off. And then that was the day of delivery. That's day of delivery, so the papilla hasn't fully come in. And then this, you can see the papilla has grown in after a couple years. I think aesthetically, that's probably the most difficult procedure that we can do right now. I think a single unit is the hardest, and then let's throw in an implant where we have to get the tissue to grow. But if we follow the principles and follow the guidelines, I think that's a pretty good aesthetic outcome for a single implant crown. And doing that all in 2 visits. Implant, custom abutment, I think everything looks good. Let's then have everything fabricated and then allow that to heal. So for this particular case, we did this kind of workflow. Now we're getting to a point, I mean, we're just talking about before and after of what I thought was cool to what we used to do beforehand when we're trying to do some work in the aesthetic zone with implants. Now all we need to do is send the STL file plus the cone beam, and then they can make a custom abutment and a temporary prefabricated crown. And that's what we're going to do in this particular case. And this particular case, I think, puts everything that Eurus does really, really well together in this particular case. We're going to have to very narrowly avoid the implant. We're going to have to avoid this particular tooth right here. I know this looks like 7. This is not 6. This is a premolar tooth number 5. He didn't have a canine. And there's a 2-rooted premolar in this spot that makes this part really, really small. So I'm threading a needle by putting a 3.0 implant in here. Most systems don't have a guided system right now with 3.0 implants. Eurus does. So there's not a lot of drills in this particular case. If we wanted to do the socket drill, we could. I was able to get the tooth out of there. And then we have very few drills because the implant's very, very small. And then we again have this guide sleeve offset at 11 to then allow us to get the guide sleeve in there and to fit. So another video real quick, very, very similar process. I know it's not the most aesthetically pleasing, but if you're looking to learn how to add some procedures, do those on patients with low lip lines where you don't have to worry about it. Those are perfect learning cases where if you follow the principles and get everything right, we'll be successful with it. And those are perfect cases to learn, to experiment with, and practice on. This tooth did take me a while. When we take the tooth out, there was a nice little hook on it that I wasn't expecting. So it did take me a little bit of time with the piezoetome going back and forth, elevating, extracting. But we got the tooth out without having to break the buccal plate. So we're able to then place the implant. And I think I got an ISQ of 69, right around that 69, 79. So I went ahead and immediately temporized. And I just shortened it way off, told them to avoid eating and chewing in the area. If I couldn't immediately temporize it, this is the one where I would just cut off like I did on the previous one, just cut the abutment off, and now we've turned it into a custom healer. And this is a patient that I should be seeing in the next week or so, just to make sure everything's healed correctly and start doing his final crown. Come on, tooth, come out. There we go. It's kind of showing the protocol I just showed. There's really no thought process that goes into this part of the surgery. You're just following the protocols and just going as deep as the drill bit will allow. Yeah, this is all what this kit is. We're using this kit right here. And just following each osteotomy drill along the way. You can see my assistant always holding down the guide to make sure there's no shifting or moving of it.
So you need a tripod, stabilities?
Yeah. I mean, most of them are nice and stable and snap on there. He's just ensuring when I'm going in, I don't pop it off in a certain way, and it's going in a spot where we don't want it. I think implants come in. Oh. So in this particular case, like I said, I switched up the bone grafting protocol. I'm packing the bone graft in there with PRF, and so it's like a more sticky, hardy bone that I can pack. I'm gonna pack it in there, and then I'm gonna do a quick osteotomy burr in reverse, just to kind of move the bone out in a different angle, like away. So I'm trying to get the bone in there as much as I can without having to pack it around the implant later. And then little bone particles get in the implant and it just becomes kind of annoying. So I'm gonna do one quick osteotomy on my last osteotomy burr in reverse, no water. In reverse, just to create space and kind of push all that stuff out, and then go ahead and put the implant in. That was the final drill. Almost like a Densa protocol. That's kind of how I'm using this one. I think I'm loading the implant right now.
So you reverse it so you won't cut.
Just super slow, yeah.
Without water.
Yeah, and then the implant goes in.
And you don't need to pack bone.
Right, yeah. And then hand torque it the rest of the way in. Trying to get more bone in there, kind of pack it.
Do you run into the situation, after you hand torque and at the end they start to spin?
So yeah, absolutely. Why is that? One is you could have gone too deep, and essentially you've bottomed out depending on the implant that you're using. You essentially think of it like stripping the wall. That can happen. If you have the ability to go wider, you can go wider, or if you can go deeper by another millimeter, or with a new implant, or you just bury it and let it cook. I say let it cook. It happens. It absolutely happens. So we're putting in the prefabricated abutment. Because of how we had to put the implant in, we had to do a severe custom abutment. We had to almost angle it just because of the adjacent teeth and the small nature of the spot. You can see the screw access hole is coming out straight facially, but we could design that all beforehand knowing what to expect. And then we get the tooth on there and we can get that cemented. So that's kind of what it ended up looking like at the day of surgery, the day of surgery. So that right there, that particular case epitomizes what we can do with the Ura system and all the digital components, where if you're doing it analog or freehand, you're gonna spend much more time, a lot more chair time, but all of this can be done for you. Let that heal. Any questions before we get into sinuses real quick? All right. Since we started a little bit late, we're going to run a little bit late for lunch. But internal sinus bumps. If you want a complete green light case, where it can be very, very predictable, I'm going to say you need at least 5 millimeters of maxillary bone to do an internal sinus bump. If you want to push the envelope a little bit and maybe use some of the denser burrs and do some of the free-handed stuff, you can probably get to 4, maybe 3.5, but I wouldn't go too much below that. Sinus perforations are going to happen. In the hands of the most experienced surgery, the rates are about 25% of the time when you're doing an internal sinus bump, you're going to have a perforation of the sinus membrane. My favorite word, Schneiderian, I can't even say it, Schneiderian membrane. Sinus bumps, simultaneously, implants are still successful at 90% of the time. There are going to be a couple types of sinus perforations. This is scientific papers that have kind of classified it into 3 different categories. If we're doing internal sinus bumps and we're more than likely going to be using a 4, 4.5, or 5 millimeter implant, I think those are usually the normal ranges of implants as far as diameter, you shouldn't be having more than a class 1 perforation because you're only drilling a 5 millimeter hole. We good with that? So we're going to primarily, if not always, be in this class of sinus perforations if we do encounter them. The paper that I'm going to show you at the end says that if you're going to have a class 1 sinus perforation, no collagen membrane is needed. They still highly recommend using a PRF membrane, putting that up there, putting a bone graft in there with the implant, and then knowing that the sinus membrane has osteogenic properties, and when it heals, it will more than likely grow bone around it as well at the same time. So if you're going to perforate, most of the time you're going to fall into this category, and you can still put the implant in there at the same time with the bone graft. For those really, really rare cases that you're going to be in class 2, they recommend you still putting a resorbable collagen membrane in there, so like an Ossix membrane that resorbs, placing your bone graft, and then putting your implant in at another visit. Now, we shouldn't have any of these because our implants are going to be 5 millimeters or less. And then a class 3, since you're doing lateral sinus windows, you could be teaching this then. For another lecture taught by someone else, you're really going to have to, if you have a 10 millimeter sinus membrane tear, something went drastically wrong with an internal sinus bump. You shouldn't be anywhere close to that. This is the article I took all that information from. It's from like the Journal of European Implantology with that title. Pretty good synopsis on how to handle sinus issues. So they did talk about PRF real quick. So we use PRF in our office. We do the phlebotomy in the state of California. PRF is allowed to be done if it's within an implant protocol per the state dental board at this point. So no issues, but we, the dentist, has to be doing the one with the phlebotomy unless your assistants have gotten phlebotomy certified, which they can if they want to. We need to get it into centrifuge within 90 minutes, and then you can turn it into membranes. You can cut it up and mix it with bone graft. Now there's also something called PRF versus PRP, and that's plasma-rich fibrin versus plasma-rich plasma. The analogy is if you can use the fibrin, that's what I would recommend doing. The fibrin, and the analogy is if you have something with a drip irrigation where it's a little bit at a time, that's better than all of a sudden a downpour and all that good stuff that you're trying to put in a centrifuge and get. The plasma is more of the liquidy, and it can essentially dissipate too quickly. The fibrin, because it's thicker and it takes the body a lot longer to process and break down, that's what you really want when we're talking about the fibrin. So you're going to see the intraspin, which is by BioHorizons, that centrifuge. You can separate it and get plasma and fibrin. And then there's the system I use, which is called BioPRF. I'll show it to you in a second, on where you get a lot more fibrin. And you also have the centrifuge, it swings out and it becomes a lot more horizontal. And when you get more of a horizontal spin, you get all of the stuff that you want, the good stuff, concentrated in that fibrin clot. They've also looked at a lot of the almost all of the PRF and PRP tubes are becoming plastic in the United States. And what they're realizing, if we're on the lab side of things, when they take blood, they don't care if you get plastic contaminants in it, because you're never using that blood again and injecting it or putting it back into the body. And the plastics are getting in there and not allowing to get a true good heal. The BioPRF company, they're somehow getting glass tubes imported from other countries, and they're giving you glass tubes, so the fibrin that you're getting is much more clean and lasts a lot longer and better for the body because there's a lot less plastics in it. So what we're looking for and why we're getting this fibrin is we're trying to get growth factors and vascularization and healing. It's not really helping bone growth. It's really just in general helping healing of the body. And what you're getting is vascularization, bone cells, bone growth, biomechanical factors, and all that stuff that we've learned about in immunology on how to heal. That's what we're looking for. With the blood supply in the jaw, the number one source of the blood supply is the periodontal ligament. The second supply is the periosteum, and the third supply is within the bone. If we're taking out a tooth, we're taking out the periodontal ligament, so we're losing the main blood supply. If we're doing a flap on these tough surgeries and we need to section teeth and we have to flap to get visualization of these spots, we're essentially removing the periosteum. We're separating that from the bone. So all we're left with is the third blood supply, which is within the bone itself. If we're doing these grafting techniques and we're doing the sinus bumps, let's then get the PRF, get that supply that we're getting all of those goodies and getting it condensed in a really, really super form, putting our own body back on steroids, and then injecting that and packing that back in. So PRF, it's getting all of the white blood cells centrifuge condensed into a really strong form and then putting that back into the body. And we're essentially getting this category, this section right here, either sucking it out or picking it out with tongs and then mixing it back up and turning it into membranes, or cutting it up and mixing it with the bone graft. And we're getting all the VEGF, all the platelet-derived growth factors, all that stuff that we are looking for to increase healing, is we're getting that in a really super concentrated form and allowing that to heal. So this is what I was talking about with this centrifuge. You see how these little centrifuge swing up, and when it spins like that, you're getting a much higher concentration of the fibrin, the PRF plugs that we want. And that's, I think I'm going to just spin it and how it kind of kicks in. The white tubes in this particular system are for the plasma if you still want to use it. I am using primarily all the red tubes, which are the glass tubes, and that helps with the actual get the boogers, as I call them, the clots. So this is us just taking it out of the red tubes of the fibrin and how we can get how they come out. And then how we have this little tray that comes, and then we have a platform that goes over the top, and then they form these nice little membranes that we can then push up and turn it into that if we're doing sinus bumps, push that up into there, or if we need to do some bone grafting, cut these up with scissors and then mix that with the bone graft, and it becomes this big, nice, large mass that is easily maneuverable instead of having bones spilling out all over the top. Here's a particular case where I know it's not a sinus bump, but I tried to essentially do one at the same time, where I know we're gonna get a tear somewhere along here. I know it's not a great picture, but we did get a tear right in this spot. You can kind of see it in this area where we have a pretty sizable hole in that spot. I would call that more of like a class 2 issue. So we're putting in a collagen membrane. I am throwing everything I have at it. We're putting a membrane, the PRF membrane that we put, and then we're putting sticky bone in there as well. And then we're suturing everything up. And you can kind of see before and after is to try to get that to essentially hopefully avoid doing a sinus bump by pushing as much stuff up in there and getting that sinus perforation to heal. So let's talk about the Urus Sinus kit real quick. I know they have the kits in the back. We'll get into those after we do some just single unit implant placement. So what it does, it has the very similar drills right here. Then we have the initial drill, and then we have what's called the step drill. What we're doing is they're going to plan this to go about 1 millimeter short of the sinus. And then once we go short of the sinus, we have different lengths that we slowly work our way up to then hopefully go through that cortical plate and pop it up with some of these condensers. All of these drills over here, starting with the sinus drills, aren't end cutting, they're flat. So what we're doing is slowly trying to just push our way forward without having a tear in the membrane. Once we get to this spot, we're going to do some hydraulic elevating where we get some saline with a little tube and try to elevate the sinus that way. And then at the end, we can start widening the osteotomies. You were asking about densiburs. Before I start doing this, this is where I put the densibur in and put bone grafting material and start trying to shoot in reverse and getting them up there. That's where I've kind of used a combination technique. And then we have elevators and different depth gauges to see how close we are and how much farther we have to go. And then at the end, we have the implant fixture handpieces. I don't think I've ever seen anyone do a narrow implant, a 3 or 3.5 in the posterior maxilla. It's always going to be 4, 4, 5, 6s. So they only have the green platform in this particular case. So here's a particular case where we started essentially start to finish some radiolucencies that we were able to diagnose off of a CBCT. And then we were able to extract the teeth. So I don't know, you can just see all the inflammation of the sinus. And then once we got the teeth out of there, how clean the sinus looks. I'm doing a measurement here of 5.87 to make sure we have about 5 millimeters worth of bone, which we do. And then this is the kind of the protocol that they give me, a 5 by 10. So we're doing a pretty significant sinus bump of 5 millimeters on this particular case. Looking back, I probably wouldn't have been that aggressive. I probably would have done like an 8 millimeter implant and just done 3 millimeters, especially with a 5.0 implant. But decided to push the limits a little bit. So if you want to do a tissue punch, a little dimple of the bone, this is where they will then give you options of we're going to do a 2.0 to initially go about 1 millimeter short of the sinus. We're going to widen it to a 2.7, And then this is where they start giving us options, and this is based off if and when we've broken the cortical plate and we're up into the sinus now. Where they're 3-2 by 15 and then a 3-2 by 16. Just depending on if we can feel that we've broken through the sinus wall. This is the hydrostatic pressure where it's a little bit of tube of saline and we're just trying to get the Schneidian membrane up away from the bone so we're not tearing it. And then we start packing bone, and then we do our 2 final osteotomies where we start widening the osteotomies, and then go ahead and place the implant. And then remember again, the same thing, fully timed, fully guided, so we also have the offset here as well. Most of the time in the posterior maxillary, we're gonna have a wide enough range, so it will almost always be a guided sleeve offset of 9.5. And then this is the surgery for this particular case. So I am flapping. It's going to take me a little bit of time to flap. And you're going to see here when we use these like little condensers, I'm feeling for like some relief. I'm like trying to break through that cortical plate. You're going to see me do it a couple times where we go a little bit deeper, and then you're going to see all of a sudden this like little condenser break through, and then I know I'm through that cortical plate, and now we're playing with the membrane itself. I'm gonna go grab one of the kits. So the different bone, well, we're not there yet, but the different bone condensers come in different heights, and they're gonna tell you on those protocols which one to use depending on the depth of the bone.
How many millimeters you can push up?
Depends. A maximum, I don't know. As much as you can get. I probably feel comfortable doing about 5. It's what I feel comfortable doing in my hands. And then it also is going to depend on if we have a tear. If you have a tear, you don't know if that bone is going to be condensed or if it's just going to start coming out through the sinus, which is a possibility. Remember, the most experienced surgeon, 25% of the time there's going to be a tear. And I just did one recently where I was going into a narrow arch, but I got the sinus bump done great, but I didn't have enough buccal lingual bone, so I then grafted it and called it a day. This is where I will then, I will try to get the implant placed, but I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. We're going to go in there with the primary objective of doing a sinus bump, and if we can get the implant in there, great. Not everything happens perfectly every single time. So the one thing is you do want to put the sinus drills down to 50 to 100 RPM, so super slow.
How hard to break that?
How hard you push? You have to put some pressure on it because it's so slow. And also remember the tip is not end cutting.
Right. So the bone is not soft.
We're only talking about 1 millimeter or 2 worth of bone. So we're not pushing against the lot. So we're kind of seeing if we can get any pressure. Like if I'm pushing on the hydraulic and I'm not getting any pressure, it means that there's still a little bit of bone up there that I now have to go through a little bit deeper.
So what's the hydraulic for?
Just to push the membrane up to give us a little bit more of a dome. So I'm now going in with a little bit longer of a drill. You can see it's not really going in. And I really have to put some pressure in there to get it to fully seat, and then it goes.
When you push it, you're still against the guide?
Yes. Yes. but it's 1 millimeter longer. So if I push too hard, it'll stop me at a certain point. So now you're gonna see me with these condensers and start feeling it. You're gonna see me tap, 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 and then all of a sudden it like will drop in. And that's when I know I've broken through the cortical plate up there. So I'm using Nova Bone in this particular spot, and I don't have any videos of me using the denser burrs yet.
Yeah. No, but when you use the saline here.
Saline?
Yeah, it's still not, you weren't through the membrane while you used it.
If I,
like previously.
yeah, so hold on, you're gonna see me try to condense the bone, and then you're gonna see me pop through here in a second. There. So yeah, yeah, I didn't need to. I didn't need to. I think this was like the first or second time I was using this kit.
It's very risky because you place, no, not the saline, I mean just because it's 10 millimeter, 5 millimeter.
Right, yeah, yeah. No, looking back at this, I would have done a 5x8.
Yeah.
But you're gonna see the results came out pretty predictable, like.
Yeah, I know,
yeah.
afterward if it works, yeah, but just during the surgery, it just.
And I also would have done a little bit of PRF. I didn't do PRF in this case. These are cases that are a little bit older, and I've added PRF, I've added sticky bone, all that stuff. Yeah, yeah. I remember the first. Sometimes I can't. Like I've seen ones where I'm like looking and I'm like sometimes I'll do it on the hand. Sometimes you can't. It's a cherry on top. It's not.
Yeah, you tell the,
yeah.
So you tell the patient.
Yeah, yeah. So now we're putting the implant in. And this doesn't have a stop. This is, again, we have to go down to the offset that it states.
Do you do the reverse turn to make sure that the bone is not in the way to the...
If I get really high torque values, I will do that. This I know no, because I did some drills afterwards. All I want the bone is up on top near the apex. We did some widening of the osteotomies. You're going to see when they have the protocols on that the bone's out of the way. I thought you were talking about reversing the torque on the handpiece. If I get like big torque numbers and I'm torquing out, I'll reverse it and do like a turn backwards as well. So I'm not trying to create any pressure necrosis of the implant. So like a 74 on a sinus bump of 5 millimeters, I'm okay with that. Cool. So that was kind of before surgery. You can see in the middle of the surgery, you can see that, and that's why I like NovaBone, is it comes out great on an X-ray. I didn't use a custom healer on this particular case. It's kind of where I was just learning and playing with it. But that's kind of the implant in place. You can see a nice dome of bone around the implant there. Again, from from the front or coronal view, bone around there. And then that was at delivery and kind of the before, during, and after. This is another case I did where we actually did bilateral at the same time, 3 and 14. Again, I'm just putting the star up here just to remember the glide sleeve offset is 9.5. This is one where I did use, I think, the reverse. In some of these cases, you're not going to be able to control where the bone goes. So you can see all of a sudden, I joke is I was trying to get a sinus bump on 3 here, but I did a great sinus bump on 2. Just that's where the bone decided to go. But we got a huge lift on it. This is during the surgery and then after the implants done in there. One of the reasons I do the non-custom healers on this particular case is I think in this particular case, I didn't have a lot of bone initially to begin with. And I like to use a little bit larger diameter healing abutments on these particular cases just to make sure the implant doesn't go up. And I don't want a custom one. I want a nice wide one, but a shorty. And that's why I used it in this particular case. I think on this side. I think on the other side, I don't remember what I did, but plenty of bone. That's where I'm using the denser burrs. So before, I will go in reverse and freehand a couple of these to get the bone. It's probably why I got so much bone up there. And then you can see the huge sinus bump that we got here. And I'm a little bit on this side, but there's plenty of bone up in that area. And then this was the other, I think this is just the kind of the front section, cross section, and then we're doing the exact same thing on the other side, to number 14 the same day. Very similar protocol here, but nice halo of bone up in those areas. And then on the CT scan afterwards. So, questions on sinus bumps? We'll go through it real quick. We're all going to have a sinus model. I'll do one first. Hopefully I don't perforate in front of all of you. You don't have to. You don't have to. Not if you're doing essentially a 5 millimeter or less implant. It's just nice to have.
When you say 5 millimeter?
Diameter. Because remember, if it's bigger than 5 millimeters, then you're going to start getting into the classification 2 and 3, and you're not going to get to classification 3. But technically, you could get into classification 2 if you had to. But if you do perforate, try to get as much bone in there. If you get sticky bone or more membranes, to just hold the bone in there in case you do have a perforation so it doesn't leak out.
How much bone you need before doing, and you decide to go like crystal versus natural?
So that's, technically it should be 5. If I'm using the DENSA system, and I've seen now I can get 5 millimeters of bone, like 4, maybe 3.5, because if I can get 5, yes, yeah. But I'm pushing the envelope, and I wouldn't do that for your first case with this kit. If I'm going to be, for me, then I'm hopefully getting into laterals this year is my goal, then that's a whole different ball game.
So 8 millimeters implant is?
I think if you're doing a 4.5 by 8, I think, or bigger, 5 by 8, something in that range, I think you should be pretty safe. 3.7. I think that's a little bit small for a posterior maxillary molar. I would, yeah, 3.7. Are we talking about diameter or length? Diameter, I would try to do at least a 4 or 4.5 in the posterior maxillary. That's just my preference. I mean, I've probably done one, but it's probably kind of, I think I've done like a 4.5 by 6. My surgeon loves 6s. There's some companies make of like a 6.5 millimeter implant that he will then avoid doing the sinus bump on. He feels comfortable doing it in his hands, and he's been predictable. I wouldn't want to hang off some like huge restoration off of it.
6.5 times 4?
A 4 by 6.5. So 4.5 millimeter diameter by 6.5 millimeter length. Some companies make them. Straumann does, Astra does. They have a 6. They have a 6. Correct, that's a way to avoid it if you have 6.5 millimeters of bone. Or you can then put an 8 millimeter in and do a very, very conservative sinus bump of 2 millimeters. You could always do that. So, The road to success isn't always nice and straightforward and easy and simple. There's going to be some learning curves. Not every case is going to go according to plan, but hopefully I've kind of opened your eyes to some of the things that these kits can do. Like I said, my favorite appointment right now is a quadrant of 2 or 3 implants. Super quick, super easy, and super productive. One of the quote that resonates with me in kind of getting ready for change and implementing it into your practice is the only way to make sense of change is to plunge into it, move into it, and enjoy the dance. Try not to tiptoe into anything. I mean, make sure you're competent and confident in doing all these, but when I jumped into the digital world, I just didn't put my toe into the shallow end and just do digital impressioning system. I kind of said I did a cannonball in the deep end. I made sure I could swim, but I had a lot of fun with it by just jumping into CEREC and restorative and all of the things that it kind of opened into. This is me a couple years ago, a long time ago. I get up to the platform, as you can tell it's bungee jumping. My feet are tied together and they start counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, and at 2, the bungee jump guy goes, "Stop, don't jump." And he goes, "Scoot back, I don't think I double knotted you." And I literally have to scoot back from the edge and come back down, and he looks at me, he goes, "Yeah, oops, I forgot to double knot you." We then have Gangster's Paradise playing in the background, the really uplifting song of Gangster's Paradise. And I have to make that decision on whether I'm going to kind of move forward or not. And take what I call take that leap of faith. We've kind of taught you how to do everything, but it's really it's on your own to kind of take that leap of faith. This is where bungee jumping actually initially started in New Zealand. So they've done like thousands of these jumps. And I decided to take that leap of faith and have a thrill of a lifetime. It's funny, when you get up there, they actually ask you if you want to touch the water, do you want to be, your hands touch, do you want to be, your hands barely touch, or do you want to be completely submerged? They have it down into that detail where we're talking about 300 or 400 yards, and then get you down, depending on your height, down to literally about a foot or so. That's how accurate they can get with these. Hopefully you've learned a little bit of something today, kind of opened your eyes and saw some stuff a little bit differently. Let's take a real short break. If you guys all want to get out of here, let's grab food. I'm going to have them flip over the room and set up all the kits. I'll do hands-on demos real quick, and then maybe have a quick working lunch, and then get you guys on your way after we do the hands-on demos. Sound like a plan? Cool. I know lunch is right outside. And if you have any questions, I'll be here for lunch. And I'll be here to do the hands-on demos afterwards. And I think they may have a couple technicians come and work one-on-one with you guys. Yeah, did I? You can email me. Where did my slides go? I think I put in my email. I didn't. I'll write it. It's really simple. Dr. Jonathan at forddentalgroup.com. JONATHAN. If you're looking to learn about sleep, kind of implementing it, walking it through A to Z, like I said, I'm starting to teach courses in Scottsdale and in Charlotte. We're going to do a couple courses towards the tail end of the year if you want to learn about sleep and implementing it into your practice. In Scottsdale, and at Spear Education, that's where we're teaching it in August and October, and then in September and December I'm going to be in Charlotte teaching it, 2-day courses. Yeah. Cool. No. It's DR, like doctor, JONATHAN at FordDentalGroup.com. F-O, like the car, F-O-R-D, my last name.
And what?
Dental?
Ford Dental?
Yep. Group.com.
When are you going to take the lateral sinus class?
Where? July.
Do you have the class set up?
I'm taking it at a place called Implant Pathways in Arizona. Is that where you took your implant? Okay, you've heard of it, yeah. Yeah. So it's an interesting concept. They've created a free community clinic in Arizona, and they teach hands-on implant courses, and they do like free dental work on these patients, but it's all done within the United States, so you don't have to go to like the DR or Mexico to have it done. But they offer implant continuums, they're offering lateral sinus courses, some other bone grafting techniques and courses too. At that, it's in Tempe or somewhere in that area. Cool. Let's grab lunch.